Chapter 251. Needless to say, the power of a vicious martial technique like the sky extinguishing earth annihilating violet sun palm was needless to say. When Chu Xiu's palm landed on Shenbai's dantian, he spat out a mouthful of purplish black blood and was thrown out of the ring. He fainted. However, Chu Xiu did not follow up with another attack because Qing Tingfeng had already appeared in front of Shenbai and was looking at Chu Xiu with an unfriendly expression. Everyone present also looked at Chu Xiu with their mouths agape. To be honest, they had never seen such a bold person who actually dared to injure a martial arts master in front of him. Qing Tingfeng pulled open Shenbai's torn clothes. On Shenbai's dantian, there was a purplish black palm print. It seemed to be growing in his flesh. He could feel an extremely evil fire burning Shenbai's meridians. Shenbai's dantian was already crippled after being struck by such a palm. It was no different from being dead. In fact, with the arrogance and conceit that Shenbai had displayed just now, Qing Tingfeng was worried that Shenbai would commit suicide after waking up because he couldn't bear such a thing. After injecting a stream of inner force into Shenbai's body to stop the purple sun demonic flame in Shenbai's body, Qing Tingfeng looked at Chu Xiu and said coldly with an unfriendly expression, "Didn't you hear me asking you to stop just now? Chu Xiu, how dare you? Do you really think that just because you have the Guanzhong torture room behind you, you can look down on the hidden sword villa?" Chu Xiu calmly cupped his hands and said, "Senior Cheng, I did not mean that. However, swords have no eyes, and fists and feet have no heart. Before we started fighting, it was Shenbai who first proposed a life and death battle. Of course, I would not refuse. Moreover, Senior Cheng, as you can see, I cultivate a part of the demonic arts. So, once I unleash my true power, I can't control myself. Just now, I really wanted to stop, but that palm still fell involuntarily. This is something that all the martial artists present can attest to, just like the battle in front of Water Cloud Temple. I just wanted to hold back, but I couldn't control myself. If I've offended you, please forgive me, Senior Cheng." Hearing Chu Xiu's sophistry, everyone present was speechless. Quite a few of them had seen the battle in front of the Water Cloud Monastery. During that battle, Chu Xiu might have really gone crazy. When he started killing, he didn't care about anything else. He didn't even care about his own safety. Instead, he killed so many of his enemies that they were terrified. But when Chu Xiu attacked just now, even an idiot could see that Chu Xiu was absolutely sober. If you can't hold back, can you still use the Wisdom Fist seal to deflect Qing Tingfeng's sword chi before attacking him? This was clearly intentional. However, although Chu Xiu's argument was sophistry, it was reasonable, and he had lowered himself sufficiently. Although Qing Tingfeng was angry that Chu Xiu had ignored his words, what else could he say? He didn't want Chu Xiu to kill Shenbai, because he didn't want to invite trouble. As a result, Shenbai was already crippled and living a life worse than death. If Qing Tingfeng insisted on punishing Chu Xiu with sufficient reason, he could. A martial Dao master didn't need any reason to teach a junior martial artist a lesson. But the problem was that if he did so, it would be equivalent to offending the Guanzhong torture room. Moreover, the Azure Water Sword sect wouldn't remember his favor, so what benefits would he get by doing so? If he knew this was the case, he might as well not say anything and let Chu Xiu and Shenbai kill each other. It would save him the trouble of taking off his pants and farting. It would be an unnecessary move that wouldn't be pleasing to both sides. Therefore, Qing Tingfeng could only let out a cold snort and said, "I will personally be the referee for the next matches. No one should think about going overboard. If you go crazy again, think about the consequences yourself." Chu Xiu smiled and cupped his hands. "Senior Cheng, don't worry. I will control myself." After finishing his statement, Chu Xiu leisurely walked down the stage and threw a few recuperation pills into his mouth, as if he was chewing on jelly beans. He might have crippled Shenbai, but he also expended a lot of energy. Especially when he used the Wisdom Fist seal to deflect Qing Tingfeng's sword chi, it almost consumed all his internal force. A martial Dao master's attack wasn't something that the current Chu Xiu could withstand, even if it was a small sword chi. With Chu Xiu's strength, he would not be able to block even a casual sword chi from Qingtingfeng. Therefore, the only thing he could do was to use the power of the Wisdom Fist Seal's condensed aura domain to teleport him away. When Chu Xiu returned to Mo Tianlin's side, Mo Tianlin looked at Chu Xiu and praised, "You've been in the limelight quite a bit today. To be honest, you're quite courageous to actually dare to challenge a martial Dao master." Luo Feiheng also looked at Chu Xiu with a strange gaze and said, "In the past, my dad always said that I was a deviant or something, but he never really punished me. But if I do something like you, I can guarantee that my dad will beat me to death." Although Xia Xiaolu didn't say anything, he also looked at Chu Xiu with the same gaze. Indeed, in the eyes of most martial artists, the dignity of a martial Dao master couldn't be challenged, but in the end, Chu Xiu dared to cripple Shenbai in front of Qingtingfeng after he called for him to stop. This was no longer something that could be described as courting death. In the eyes of most people, Chu Xiu's behavior was equivalent to courting death. Chu Xiu casually waved his hand and said, "I'm not an idiot, I wouldn't do this if it was under other circumstances. This God Weapon Conference is organized by the Hidden Sword Villa. If the Hidden Sword Villa takes the lead and doesn't follow the rules, then what's the point of this God Weapon Conference? Moreover, I'm in the right in this matter. If the Hidden Sword Villa dares to touch me, they'll be the ones losing face." Mo Tianlin and the others all shook their heads. Although that was what they said, there weren't many people who would actually dare to do such a thing. The battle between Chu Xiu and Shenbai was extremely intense, and the sharp aura produced when the two of them fought was directly poured into the formation, even causing the embryo in the furnace to faintly condense into the shape of a knife. The shape was ferocious and sharp, and at a glance, it was obvious that it was not a good method. It was obvious that Chu Xiu was the most outstanding one in this God Weapon Conference. If Chu Xiu could maintain this state in the next battle, then he would definitely be the winner of this God Weapon Conference. At this time, everyone subconsciously looked at Xiahou Wujiang. Among these people, the only one who could compete with Chu Xiu was Xiahou Wujiang. Although Tong Kaitai was also in the Three-Flower realm, no one was familiar with him. Moreover, Tong Kaitai had previously retreated from the hands of Chu Xiu, so everyone subconsciously thought that Tong Kaitai's strength was not as good as Chu Xiu's. At this time, Xiahou Wujiang also frowned. To be honest, after seeing Chu Xiu's attack, he was also a little uncertain. The Xiahou clan's imperial spirit technique followed a completely different path from normal martial arts. Without a real fight, he couldn't be sure if he could defeat Chu Xiu. Even if he took out all his trump cards, his chances of winning were no more than 50%. Of course, he could also choose not to fight. Although he couldn't win, at least he wouldn't lose, and he wouldn't lose face. Moreover, the people of the Xiahou clan almost never used weapons, so having a god weapon in hand didn't mean much. But the problem was that under such circumstances, even if he didn't fight, he would be ridiculed by some people for being afraid of Chu Xiu. Moreover, this Chu Xiu was actually on good terms with Mo Tianlin and dared to ruin his plans just now. If he didn't teach him a lesson, Xiahou Wujiang wouldn't be satisfied. At this time, the next group of people had already entered the arena. One of them was the black-robed man that Chu Xiu had been paying attention to before. His opponent was a martial artist at the peak of the physical invulnerability realm. The black-robed man was unknown, so his opponent certainly wouldn't give up just like that. The physical invulnerability realm martial artist glanced at the black-robed man and didn't recognize him. He was definitely a nobody, but he didn't care. He just waved the sword in his hand and said indifferently, "If you know what's good for you, take the initiative to admit defeat. You can save some energy." But the black-robed man suddenly laughed. His voice was full of disdain, which made the physical invulnerability realm martial artist angry. He snorted coldly and rushed forward with his sword. But at this time, the black-robed man suddenly opened his mouth and laughed strangely. "Don't blame me. If you want to blame someone, blame your own bad luck." As soon as he finished speaking, the black-robed man stretched out a hand. In an instant, endless demonic aura enveloped the physical invulnerability realm martial artist. Only a wail could be heard. The demonic aura seemed to penetrate through every pore, directly seeping into the martial artist's body and forcefully sucking away his vitality. Almost in an instant, the physical invulnerability realm martial artist turned into a dried corpse. At this moment, everyone was stunned, including the people from the hidden sword villa. Because this batch of martial artists on the arena didn't have any fame, the crowd didn't even pay attention to them. Even the referee felt a little careless. In the end, before they could react, a scream came from the other side. One person had died. Wasn't this a little too fast? At this time, the faces of the people from the hidden sword villa, especially Cheng Tingfeng, darkened. Just now, he was the one who said that the others shouldn't go too far. In the end, as soon as he said that, someone killed someone in front of him. This was simply a slap to his face. Cheng Tingfeng looked at the black-robed man and shouted, "Which sect are you from? Didn't you hear what I said just now? The God Weapon Conference is not a place for you to come and kill people. Do you really think that the hidden sword villa is easy to talk to? Which sect are you from? Cheng Tingfeng, don't you recognize me?" Cheng Tingfeng frowned. He suddenly felt that something was wrong. But at this time, the aura of the black-robed man had begun to rise continuously. From the physical invulnerability realm to the three flowers above one's prominence, then to the five Qis unification, and finally to the martial arts master realm. A powerful demonic aura shot up into the sky. The black-robed man took off his hat, revealing an extremely ordinary face. However, that face seemed to be magic, quickly changing, and finally became the face of a cold middle-aged man. Under the holy sect, Shadow Demon Envoy, Situ Li of the Phaseless Demon Sect. Cheng Tingfeng, I've always remembered that sword of yours in the past. Situ Li smiled coldly at Cheng Tingfeng, his eyes filled with intense killing intent. Chapter 252. Hearing the names of the Holy Sect and the Phaseless Demon Sect, everyone's expression suddenly changed. Even the people from the Hidden Sword Villa and the Mo family of the Mirror Lake Villa reacted the same way. The Holy Sect referred to the Kunlun Devil Cult, but it was just the name that the Kunlun Devil Cult called themselves. To the Kunlun Devil Cult, they did not think of themselves as demons. During the era when Dugu Weiwei dominated the pugilistic world, he once told the people of the Kunlun Devil Cult what was righteous and what was demonic. Why should the righteous path be higher than the demonic path? The so-called demonic path was just a name. As long as the Kunlun Devil Cult could suppress the world, then even if they were the demonic path, they could still become the supreme holiness and be worshipped by everyone in the world. Therefore, from then on, the Kunlun Devil Cult called themselves the Holy Sect. That was also the time when the Kunlun Devil Cult was at its peak. As for the Phaseless Demon Sect, it was also very famous. It was one of the 7 sects and 8 schools, but it was the best hidden one. Even now, no one in the pugilistic world knew where the Phaseless Demon Sect was. Furthermore, what made Phaseless Demon Sect famous in the pugilistic world was not their strength, but their loyalty to Kunlun Demon Sect. In the past, when Dugu Weiwei disappeared after the battle with Ning Xuanji, the entire Kunlun Devil Cult could be said to have fallen apart and was completely annihilated by the righteous path. However, back then, there were not many people in the Kunlun Devil Cult. Those who could officially become the disciples of the Kunlun Devil Cult were the elites of the elites. In the past, the Kunlun Devil Cult was able to conquer the world by relying on countless vassals of the demonic path. For example, the North Plains Evil Pole Sect, the Southern Borders Moon-worshipping Cult, and the Phaseless Demon Sect. They were all vassal sects under the Kunlun Devil Cult and were under the command of the Kunlun Devil Cult. However, after the Kunlun Devil Cult was annihilated, these vassal sects fled in all directions. Some even chose to kick them when they were down. The Phaseless Demon Sect was the most loyal. After hundreds of years, they were still loyal to the Kunlun Devil Cult. Their attitude had never changed. All these years, the Phaseless Demon Sect had been hiding underground because they had a secret technique that could perfectly conceal their aura. Furthermore, they could change their appearance and figure at will. Therefore, even if the righteous sects wanted to exterminate the Phaseless Demon Sect, they had never succeeded. At most, they had killed a few people, but it was not enough to greatly damage the strength of the phaseless demon sect. In the past, when the Kunlun demon sect was at its peak, the phaseless demon sect was in charge of gathering information. When the Kunlun devil cult was at its peak, the phaseless demon sect was in charge of gathering information for the Kunlun devil cult. Take this Situli for example. Given his strength, he could easily become an elder or even the sect head of the phaseless demon sect. However, he still addressed himself as the Shade Devil Envoy. This was enough to show his loyalty to the Kunlun demon sect. Cheng Tingfeng narrowed his eyes as he looked at Situli. He remembered this face. All these years, the phaseless demon sect had been causing trouble in the dark. They took revenge on the righteous sects that attacked the Kunlun devil cult. They even took revenge on the vassal sects that hit the Kunlun devil cult when they were down. They were the traitors that they called traitors. Therefore, the phaseless demon sect was not loved by anyone. As long as they showed their face, they would be hunted down. In the past, Cheng Tingfeng had also participated in the hunt for the people from the phaseless demon sect. At that time, he had severely injured Situli. However, it was a pity that Situli had escaped. Cheng Tingfeng said coldly, "You bunch of rats from the phaseless demon sect actually dare to appear again. Moreover, you even appeared in a place like the Divine Weapon Conference. You really don't know what's good for you. I let you escape in the past, but this time, do you think you can escape? I didn't go to kill you, but you took the initiative to jump out and cause trouble. You really don't know what's good for you." Situli laughed and said in a sinister voice, "Cheng Tingfeng, I said it before. I will return that sword attack of yours sooner or later. Moreover, if I wasn't fully prepared, do you think I would appear here?" As soon as he finished speaking, a strong demonic aura suddenly erupted from the bodies of some of the martial artists who looked low-key and ordinary. The appearance of these martial artists changed, and they all looked the same. It looked very strange. Most importantly, these people were extremely strong. Even the weakest among them had the strength of a physical invulnerability expert. A total of dozens of martial artists from the phaseless demon sect jumped onto the stage and burst out their demonic chi without any scruples. This caused Cheng Tingfeng's face to change slightly. These fellows from the phaseless demon sect were really hard to deal with. After such a long time, he actually didn't notice anything wrong. He actually let so many disciples from the phaseless demon sect sneak in. If it was in the Hidden Sword Villa, he wouldn't be afraid of these disciples from the phaseless demon sect. However, the problem was that this was the Mirror Lake Villa. This time, the Hidden Sword Villa was only here to host the Divine Weapon Conference. Therefore, they didn't bring too many disciples. Although they brought elites, there were only a dozen of them. As for the Mirror Lake Villa, these people were all descendants of Mo Yezi. Almost all of them were blacksmiths. They were in the same realm, but unfortunately, none of them could fight. It was useless to count on them. Cheng Tingfeng's face darkened, and he said coldly, "You want to kill me with just these few people? Wishful thinking. I think your phaseless demon sect has been living too comfortably recently. When I return to the Hidden Sword Villa, I will definitely mobilize the power of the Hidden Sword Villa to kill your phaseless demon sect." Situli said indifferently, "Don't flatter yourself too much. This time, the phaseless demon sect spent so much effort not to kill you." Cheng Tingfeng's face changed slightly. "Then what are you trying to do?" Situli didn't directly answer Cheng Tingfeng's question. Instead, he sneered at the nervous young martial artists below the stage. "Do you think that the Hidden Sword Villa put in so much effort to host this Divine Weapon Conference to give you divine weapons for free? They actually want to use you to refine weapons." Everyone froze. Grandmaster Mo Yezi had already explained this to them earlier. He said that Grandmaster Mo Yezi had invented a new method of weaponsmithing that required the sharpness of their attacks to be used to forge the divine weapons. Although they had to act personally, in the end, the divine weapons would still belong to them. In that case, they wouldn't be at a disadvantage. Situli sneered, "Do you really think the Hidden Sword Villa will be so kind? Do you know what material is used to refine the divine weapon in the furnace? It's the token of our holy church, the demonic order. You keep saying how good our holy church is, acting as if it's a taboo, but in the end, you're using our holy church's things to refine divine weapons. How hypocritical is that? Everyone present had different expressions. To be honest, most of them didn't know what the demonic order was. However, in the past, the Kunlun devil cult dominated the world. To be able to be related to the Kunlun devil cult, it must be a treasure. Using it to refine divine weapons was normal. Of course, this kind of thing didn't sound good. Just like what Situli said, it was a bit hypocritical. However, there were quite a number of disciples from the major sects present. If they were in Qin Wentian's shoes, they would do the same thing as well. It was just that they couldn't let others know about it. Wasting was not a good habit. Chu Xiu knew some of the truth because he also had that token. It should be a fragment of the demonic order. This thing really was related to the Kunlun devil cult. Looking at everyone's expression, Situli sneered. As expected, the so-called people from the large sects are all the same. However, what if I say that Imo Yezi and the people from the Hidden Sword Villa joined hands to restore the demon sword, longing yearning of our holy church's 3 great demon weapons? Hearing this, everyone's expression changed abruptly. In the past, when the Kunlun devil cult dominated the world, there were 3 divine weapons that were the most famous. They were the demon blade, the demon sword, and the demon spear. Among them, the demon blade was the weapon of the cult's leader, Dugu Weiwei. It had long been lost without a trace. As for the remaining 2 demon weapons, they were in the hands of 2 of the 4 great demon sovereigns of the Kunlun devil cult. Among them, the demon sword, Longing Yearning, was also very famous in Jianghu. Although its name was very poetic and even gentle, it had harvested countless lives. It caused countless martial artists to lose their loved ones and teachers, and could only yearn alone. However, following the annihilation of the Kunlun devil cult, it was said that the demon sword, Longing Yearning, was also destroyed by the righteous experts. Why would Situli say that this thing was in the hands of the Hidden Sword Villa, and that the Hidden Sword Villa wanted to restore it? Nonsense! Cheng Tingfeng shouted angrily. In his hand, a long sword that was blooming with a soaring sword light was already unsheathed. Then, with a wave of his hand, the other martial artists of the Hidden Sword Villa immediately took action, not allowing Situli to speak nonsense. However, Situli sneered and said, "Don't be anxious. Later, even if you don't take action, I will. However, today, I want to let the entire Jianghu see how hypocritical your Hidden Sword Villa is, and how greedy you are. Mo Guangyuan, take action, what are you waiting for?" As Situli's voice fell, a person from the Mirror Lake Villa quickly walked out. He drew on the formation, then immediately jumped to the side of the people from the phaseless demon sect. The formation was activated again, and the mechanism on the ground turned, and another empty furnace appeared. However, what existed in this furnace was not an embryo, but a pitch-black slender sword. It was abnormally beautiful, and there were fine patterns on it, emitting a shocking demonic aura. However, at this time, the slender sword was covered in cracks, as if it would shatter with a light touch. Situli sneered and said, "You all saw it. This so-called using the formation to forge a weapon is just a pretense. Although in the end, by borrowing your sharpness, they will indeed forge a divine weapon, but in reality, what they really want to restore is the demon sword, Longing Yearning, that belongs to my holy sect." Chapter 253. The series of changes at the God Weapon Conference made everyone unable to react. It was supposed to be a God Weapon Conference for the geniuses of the younger generation. How did it turn into Hidden Sword Villa and Mo Yezi working together to restore the Kunlun devil cult's demon sword, Longing Yearning? Demon weapons were not like other godly weapons. The demon sword, Longing Yearning, was a 9th transformation existence. The demonic nature within it was deeply rooted. Even if an ordinary martial artist obtained the Longing Yearning, if their willpower was not strong enough, they would be affected by the demon sword and turn into a demon that wreaked havoc in the martial world. What Hidden Sword Villa and Mo Yezi were doing was taboo in the martial world. Below the stage, a few martial artists from large sects questioned, "Senior Cheng, Grandmaster Mo Yezi, we need an explanation for this. Cheng Tingfeng snorted and gripped the sword in his hand tightly. He had no obligation to explain to these young martial artists. It would make more sense if the people behind them did. However, Mo Yezi sighed, demon weapons and godly weapons are all weapons. I only want to personally restore a 9th transformation weapon. Moreover, as long as I can borrow the sharpness to restore the demon sword, I will remove the demonic chi from the demon sword. By now, everyone had guessed that Hidden Sword Villa's reason for doing this was actually very simple. Hidden Sword Villa had a hobby of collecting famous swords. Although the Longing Yearning was a demon sword, it was still a 9th transformation godly weapon. Hidden Sword Villa did not know where they obtained the damaged demon sword, but they probably had this thought for a long time. As for Mo Yezi, it was just as he said, he did not have any selfish motives. However, as a weapon refinement grandmaster, and one that was already old, he could not resist the temptation of personally restoring a 9 revolution weapon. That was why he agreed to the Hidden Sword Mountain Villa's request. After the divine weapon was completed, it would be taken away by the elites of the Jianghu. In the dark, they could use the sharpness of the weapon to restore the yearning sword and expel the demonic chi within it. However, they did not expect the phaseless demon sect to jump out and expose everything. Even if they managed to defeat the phaseless demon sect, it would definitely affect their reputation. Glancing at Mo Guanyuan, Mo Yezi sighed, Guanyuan, you are my nephew. Among the younger generation of the Mo clan, your talent is one of the best. Why did you collude with the phaseless demon sect and do such a thing? Mo Yezi had a son, but he dared to say that he cared more about Mo Guanyuan than his own son. He practically treated Mo Guanyuan as his successor. Now that Mo Guanyuan had betrayed him, Mo Yezi was not angry, only sad and confused. Mo Guanyuan lowered his head and didn't look at Mo Yezi. He simply said, Uncle, you were the previous owner of the Divine Weapon Pavilion and a renowned Grandmaster Artificer. Logically speaking, as members of the Mo clan, we should also join the Divine Weapon Pavilion. But in the end, because of your so-called reputation, you forced us, the Mo clan's disciples, to stay in the Mirror Lake Manor. So what if he forged a top-notch weapon in a remote corner of the world? As weapon refiners, could it be that the weapons that we forge can only be covered in dust? No. Just like what you said, as a weapon refiner, personally witnessing the weapon that he forged transform into an even more powerful godly weapon, that is the greatest sense of accomplishment. Unfortunately, you taught me all of this, but you didn't give me the opportunity to use it. Even if you are no longer the owner of the Divine Weapon Pavilion, the Mo clan still cannot join the Divine Weapon Pavilion. I need to find a place to fulfill my ambition. 99% of the weapon refiners in the world are in the Divine Weapon Pavilion. Now that you don't allow us to join the Divine Weapon Pavilion, I have to change my method. Whether it is the righteous path or the demonic path, as long as they provide me with enough resources and opportunities, why should I refuse? Hearing Mo Guanyuan's words, Mo Yezi was stunned. Then, he smiled bitterly. Do you really think that I don't want you to join the Divine Weapon Pavilion? I am protecting you. Do you think that anyone can enter the Divine Weapon Pavilion? Do you think that there would be less scheming between armament refiners? When I was the pavilion master, I did not allow you to join the Divine Weapon Pavilion because I was afraid of rumors. But after I retired from the underworld, I did not allow you to join the Divine Weapon Pavilion because I was afraid that something would happen to you. Even though I, Mo Yezi, am old, I still have the confidence to forge a 6th revolution precious weapon in a year. In the end, I retired from the underworld so quickly. Do you think I did it voluntarily? Even an idiot could hear the meaning in Mo Yezi's tone. His retirement from the underworld was not voluntary, and it even involved some internal conflict within the Divine Weapon Pavilion. This was very interesting. Mo Guanyuan was also stunned. Obviously, he did not expect there to be such a hidden story. However, Mo Guanyuan only shook his head and said, Uncle, you don't need to say any more. Now that I have helped the phaseless demon sect, there is no going back. Situli said indifferently, all right, I have said everything that needs to be said. It is time to take action. The demon sword that belongs to my holy sect will naturally be kept by my holy sect. I still have to thank you for restoring the broken Xianxia to this state. But there is no need for you to meddle. If my holy sect's demon sword was erased of its demonic chi, would it still be called a demon sword? Situ Li and the people from the phaseless demon sect were waiting for this moment. The Xianxia had already absorbed most of the sharp chi from the battle between Chu Xiu and Shen Bai. Although there were still cracks on it, it could be considered to have recovered. That was why Situ Li jumped out at this time. However, the martial artist who fought with him was unlucky. He was instantly killed by a martial Dao master. Cheng Tingfeng said to Mo Yezi, Master Mo Yezi, take down the demon sword. I will cover you and kill your way out. The Mo clan's artificers from the Mirror Lake Manor couldn't be of any help, so they could only retreat with the demon sword. Kill your way out? You can't escape. Situ Li clapped his hands, and in an instant, a large array rose into the sky outside the Mirror Lake Manor. A faint blue light enveloped the entire Mirror Lake Manor. This caused the expressions of everyone present to change, especially those who came to participate in the God Weapon Convention. Previously, when they found out that the people from the phaseless demon sect were after the demon sword yearning, they heaved a sigh of relief. This was a grudge between the phaseless demon sect and the hidden sword villa. It had nothing to do with them. But now, the phaseless demon sect used a formation to trap them here. God knows if this group of demons would kill them as well. Cheng Tingfeng turned to look at Mo Yezi and shouted angrily, how many traitors did your Mirror Lake Manor have? You actually let the people from the phaseless demon sect set up a formation outside? Mo Yezi was also dumbfounded. Although he was the owner of the Mirror Lake Manor, he usually only refined weapons. Why would he care about so many things? Situ Li sneered. For today, they had prepared for a long time. Actually, this formation really had nothing to do with the Mirror Lake Manor. It was the content of the deal between the phaseless demon sect and Prince and Lu, Jiang Wenyuan. As the local tyrant of Eastern Qi, Jiang Wenyuan had many people under him. These people were all local martial artists of the Ji State Prefecture. When they went to the Mirror Lake Manor to buy weapons, they would leave behind a formation plate that had already been engraved. After going back and forth a few times, dozens of formation plates had quietly been left around the Mirror Lake Manor. Finally, they merged into this large formation. Attack! Kill our way out! Cheng Tingfeng shouted. Mo Yezi immediately took the demon's sword from the furnace and followed Cheng Tingfeng out of the Mirror Lake Manor. If you don't leave behind the demon's sword of the Holy Church, none of you can think of leaving. How can we leave the things of the Holy Church in your hands? Situ Li snorted coldly. The demon chi around him was monstrous. He took a step forward and appeared in front of Cheng Tingfeng. The boundless demon chi turned into a huge ghost claw that was more than 10 feet long and slammed towards Cheng Tingfeng. Cheng Tingfeng's eyes showed a touch of coldness. I can defeat you in the past, and I can do the same today. If it weren't for me worrying about the other disciples of the Hidden Sword Villa, do you think I would run away? As his voice fell, the long sword in Cheng Tingfeng's hand was unsheathed. In an instant, the sword light soared into the sky, illuminating the entire Mirror Lake Manor. In an instant, the bright and magnificent sword light had torn the ghost claw apart. Cheng Tingfeng's overbearing sword chi was revealed. Situ Li said with a weird smile, making such a big movement, are you going to attract other real pellet state martial Dao Grand Master? Don't waste your energy. At this time, there is not even a martial Dao Grand Master around the Ji State Prefecture. Xiao Baiyu came before, and I was thinking about how to get rid of him. I didn't expect that he took the initiative to leave because of the matter between the boy of Guanzhong Torture Hall and the girl of Divine Force Sect, which saved me some effort. Everyone present subconsciously looked at Chu Xiu. Situ Li was talking about Chu Xiu. This guy indirectly helped these phaseless demon sect people. At this time, Chu Xiu stared blankly at the embryo that had not yet formed in the array. The demonic sword Everlasting Yearning was taken away by others, but this unformed demonic weapon was still here. Chu Xiu suddenly whispered to Mo Tianlin and others at this time, "Everyone, do me a favor. I'm going to seize the unformed divine weapon. I owe everyone a favor this time." Mo Tianlin said in surprise, "The divine weapon is not formed yet, it's just an embryo. What do you want that thing for?" Chu Xiu squinted his eyes and said, "It's not formed now, but it's not certain when we fight later. The array is still running. Even without Master Mo Yezi's control, the sharpness during the fight will continuously seep into it. In the end, this divine weapon may not be formed. Besides, I can also add some materials into it." Although Mo Tianlin didn't understand what Chu Xiu meant by adding materials, but if it wasn't for Chu Xiu, he would definitely be humiliated by Xiahou Wujiang in public, so Mo Tianlin directly nodded and agreed. Xia Xiaolu was the same. Chu Xiu was Lu Fengxian's good friend, and he even helped his best friend Mo Tianlin just now. There was no reason for him not to help. Luo Feihong, on the other hand, stretched and held the blood spear red kite in his hand. He said lazily, "It's not fun to just watch the fun at the God Weapon Convention. Count me in." Chapter 254. Under the ambush of the Phaseless Demon sect, the entire Mirror Lake Villa was in chaos. The Phaseless Demon sect originally came to take back the demon sword, Eternal Yearning. Not to mention the value of the sword itself, for a sect like the Phaseless Demon sect that was still loyal to the Kunlun Devil cult, the sword itself was one of the symbols of the Kunlun Devil cult, so they had to take it back. Moreover, when Xing Tingfeng fought with Situli, he was shocked to discover that Situli, who he had defeated in the past, had now surpassed him in terms of cultivation and combat strength. Situli grinned and said, "Xing Tingfeng, do you think that you're the only one who has been cultivating for so many years? In the past, I was defeated by you, and ever since I returned to the Phaseless Demon sect, I've been bitterly cultivating my devil arts. In the end, I managed to cultivate this demonic phaseless mystic technique to the large success stage. Now, it's time for you to experience the might of my demonic phaseless mystic technique." As his voice fell, Situli waved his hand, and in an instant, majestic demon qi directly enveloped Xing Tingfeng. In the envelopment of the demon qi, Xing Tingfeng's eyes were filled with illusions. There were tempting goddesses dancing, and there were also heavenly demons roaring. Below, there were also countless martial artists he had killed before turning into evil spirits and pouncing towards him. The Phaseless Demon sect's Phaseless Demon technique was a very complicated demonic technique. It included several kinds of aura concealment or secret techniques to change forms. And when the demon formless mystic technique was cultivated to the extreme, it was an evil secret technique that could attract the opponent's inner demons and cause them to fall into an illusion. It was also considered one of the primordial spirit's secret techniques. Xing Tingfeng coldly snorted and said, "Treacherous tricks." As his voice fell, he directly slashed out with his sword. In an instant, a powerful sword qi tore through the heaven and earth, destroying all the illusions. Situli's figure also appeared within it. Just as Xing Tingfeng was about to kill Situli, Situli's figure suddenly turned into hundreds and thousands of figures rushing towards Xing Tingfeng. Boundless demon qi enveloped him, and he was still in that illusion. Xing Tingfeng reversed his meridians and spurted out a mouthful of blood. Only then did he manage to break away from the illusion of the sky demon formless technique. Situli looked at Xing Tingfeng and said coldly, "Back then, that sword of yours made me recuperate for many years. Now, this is just the interest." As he spoke, Situli charged forward again. The Phaseless Demon sect and the Hidden Sword Villa were in a mess. At this moment, after receiving the promise from Mo Tianlin and the others, Chu Xiu stepped onto the stage and walked towards the embryo of the divine weapon. Everyone was stunned when they saw Chu Xiu's actions. What was he trying to do? Xiahou Wujiang directly blocked in front of Chu Xiu and said coldly, "Chu Xiu, what do you want?" Chu Xiu said indifferently, "What? Of course, I'm here to get my reward from the God Weapon Convention. Otherwise, why would I come here?" Hearing Chu Xiu's words, everyone present reacted. Right now, both sides were fighting so fiercely for the demon's sword longing yearning, and the embryo of the divine weapon was thrown here by them. What was truly valuable was a divine weapon. Although the embryo in front of them was not a divine weapon, it was still an embryo with the potential of a divine weapon. Naturally, it could also be considered a treasure. After being reminded by Chu Xiu, they remembered that if they could get their hands on this thing, this god weapon convention would not be in vain. Xiahou Wujiang laughed coldly and said, "What a joke. You haven't even gotten first place in this god weapon convention, and you want to get this reward? Moreover, Master Mo Yezi and the seniors of the Hidden Sword Villa are fighting fiercely, but you came to get this embryo yourself. What's the difference between this and stealing?" Chu Xiu said indifferently, "Of course there's a difference. I'm taking it openly, not sneakily. The first place of the God Weapon Convention is qualified to get this divine weapon. Right now, I've defeated Shenbai, and even the embryo of this divine weapon has condensed into a saber shape because of me. Who dares to compete with me?" Chu Xiu's cold eyes looked around. Almost all the warriors present turned their heads, not daring to look at Chu Xiu. At this time, these people present did not even dare to show their heads. Just now, they had seen the power of Chu Xiu when he crippled Shenbai. Among the same level, who could be a match for him? Jumping out to challenge Chu Xiu at this time was almost equivalent to seeking death. Chu Xiu said indifferently, "You saw it. They all admit that I'm the first place of this God Weapon Convention. Now that I'm here to take this thing, do you have any objections? Or is it that here, only you, Xiahou Wujiang, are unconvinced?" At this time, Mo Tianlin and the other two also walked up to the arena, standing behind Chu Xiu. This kind of attitude was needless to say. Xiahou Wujiang frowned when he saw the situation, cursing in his heart that these martial artists were useless. They were actually scared to such an extent by Chu Xiu alone. But now that the others did not make a move, he did not have absolute confidence against Chu Xiu. Coupled with Mo Tianlin and the other two, he was almost certain to lose. But Xiahou Wujiang was a person who cared a lot about his reputation. Just now, he even took the initiative to stand up to stop Chu Xiu. But now, if he cowered because of Chu Xiu's threat, where would he put his face? Therefore, Xiahou Wujiang could only soften his tone and said, "Little sister Luo, this matter has nothing to do with you. Don't get involved. Also, Xia Xiaolu, my Xiahou clan and your World Alliance mind our own business. We even have some business dealings. Today, you are standing on Chu Xiu's side. Have you obtained Alliance Chief Chen's approval?" He wanted to persuade Luo Feiheng and Xia Xiaolu to withdraw. As for Mo Tianlin, he really did not say anything. Mo Tianlin had already formed a death feud with him. If there was a chance, he was sure that Mo Tianlin would definitely hit him when he was down. Therefore, no matter what he said, Mo Tianlin would not retreat. Luo Feiheng sneered and said, "Xiahou Wujiang, if you want to have ideas about me, you have to see if you are qualified. What I want to do is none of your business. I would like to see how strong your Xiahou clan's spirit control technique is." Luo Feiheng was ranked 11th on the Longhu leaderboard, and Xiahou Wujiang was just in front of her. If there was a chance, Luo Feiheng did not mind kicking Xiahou Wujiang out and ascending to the top 10 of the Longhu leaderboard himself. Seeing these people's attitudes, Xiahou Wujiang was in a dilemma. Chu Xiu seemed to have only known them for a few days, but they were able to stand together so firmly. This made Xiahou Wujiang feel a little helpless. At this time, Tong Kaitai suddenly jumped onto the ring and said with a smile, "We are all in the Three-Flower Realm. Brother Xiahou and I haven't even made a move yet, and you are already going to take the reward. This is a little unfair." Xiahou Wujiang glanced at Tong Kaitai. This guy came from the demonic path and was said to be a lunatic. But now, it seemed that this guy was not too crazy. He still knew how to do things that were cost-effective for him. Tong Kaitai pointed at Chu Xiu and said, "Brother Xiahou, you go take care of those 3 people and then help me. I will deal with Chu Xiu. After that, I will let you have the weapon. I only want Chu Xiu's heart." Xiahou Wujiang frowned. It seemed that this Tong Kaitai was still a lunatic. He actually wanted to dig out Chu Xiu's heart. Was he addicted to digging out hearts? However, Xiahou Wujiang did not care so much. Anyway, it was fine as long as there was someone to deal with Chu Xiu. He was confident that he could take care of the remaining 3 people in a short time. Walking in front of Luo Feiheng and the others, Xiahou Wujiang said softly, "Little sister of the Luo family, I'm sorry. But don't worry, I won't hurt you." Xiahou Wujiang only spoke softly to Luo Feiheng. As for Xia Xiaolu and Mo Tianlin, he did not even look at them. Since these 2 people did not want to give him face, then there was no need for him to give them face. Luo Feiheng could not be bothered to talk nonsense with Xiahou Wujiang. The blood spear red kite in her hand moved, and the spear's shadow stretched out like 100 birds paying homage to the phoenix. The dense scarlet spear shadow fell with a glorious momentum. It was incomparably majestic. It was hard to imagine that this was actually the power of a woman's attack. On the other side, Xia Xiaolu also moved. The floating feather blade behind him bloomed with a strange sharpness. The blade's aura was not very powerful, but it was attached to his blade. It was as if it was tearing through the void, and its speed was extremely fast. Although it was launched later, it arrived in front of Xiahou Wujiang in the blink of an eye. Finally, Mo Tianlin's hand was also filled with sword qi. Moreover, it could be said that he attacked in anger, bringing with it a powerful momentum to attack Xiahou Wujiang. Seeing the 3 people attack, the corner of Xiahou Wujiang's mouth revealed a disdainful smile. Although the gap between the 3-flower realm and the physical invulnerability realm was huge, there were still many people who could cross a realm to kill people. Xiahou Wujiang often did this kind of thing. But now he was in the 3-flower realm, and the others were physical invulnerability realm. Even if Luo Feiheng and the other 2 joined forces, it would be impossible for them to defeat him. Xiahou Wujiang had absolute confidence in this. Divine light bloomed in his eyes, and the imperial spirit technique was fully unleashed. The spiritual pressure was already faintly condensing into a solid substance. Xiahou Wujiang had already started fighting on his side. Chu Xiu looked at Tong Kaitai and said indifferently, "I didn't go looking for trouble with you, but you took the initiative to come to die. It's really strange. A madman is not the same as a fool. I don't know who gave you the courage to stand here and face me." Tong Kaitai narrowed his eyes and stared at Chu Xiu. He chuckled and said, "Your heart is the most attractive of all the martial artists I've seen. I have a feeling that even if I swallow the heart of a martial arts master, it won't be as beneficial as swallowing your heart. Why don't you give it to me, how about it?" Chu Xiu said in a cold tone, "Since you want to die so much, then fine, I'll fulfill your wish." As soon as his voice fell, Chu Xiu directly formed the Great Vajra will seal and blasted it toward Tong Kaitai. Last time, Chu Xiu already wanted to kill Tong Kaitai. The other party felt that there was something wrong with his heart. Although Tong Kaitai didn't know why, the secret of the glazed golden silk goo couldn't be lost. Chu Xiu didn't plan to keep him alive and was ready to find an opportunity to kill Tong Kaitai. Now that Tong Kaitai had jumped out recklessly to court death, Chu Xiu didn't need to be polite with him. Chapter 255. Chu Xiu's strength had already been revealed when he fought with Shen Bai just now. Even Xiahou Wujiang didn't have absolute confidence in fighting with Chu Xiu. Tong Kaitai was just a madman, not a fool. He had the guts to fight with Chu Xiu only because he still had a sliver of a chance to kill Chu Xiu. When Chu Xiu fought with Shen Bai just now, most people only saw Chu Xiu's strength, but they neglected the fact that Chu Xiu had crippled Shen Bai. Naturally, he wasn't unscathed. Tong Kaitai's actions in the Jianghu were so crazy not only because of his strength, but also because of his abnormal perception ability. When it came to talent, Tong Kaitai could only be considered mediocre. However, his perception ability was able to help him escape from the numerous experts of Longhu Mountain's celestial master abode. It could even be said that if he didn't have his perception ability, he would have already been caught by the people of Longhu Mountain in the mountains of West Chu and directly cut into pieces. Moreover, Tong Kaitai's perception ability was also very useful in a fight. He could clearly perceive the opponent's weaknesses and flaws, which could be said to be a great killing weapon in a fight. At this moment, he dared to fight with Chu Xiu because he naturally sensed the injuries and exhaustion in Chu Xiu's body. He might not necessarily have no confidence in this fight. Most importantly, there was still Xiahou Wujiang over there. As long as Xiahou Wujiang dealt with the 3 physical invulnerability realm warriors first, they would be able to defeat Chu Xiu in a 2 versus 1 situation. Being a madman didn't mean that he was stupid. Tong Kaitai only acted crazily, but in reality, he was meticulous in a fight. This could also be said to be a kind of talent. As Chu Xiu's great Vajra will seal descended, Tong Kaitai's hands moved. The demonic energy within his 10 fingers seemed to transform into a large net, directly resisting Chu Xiu's great Vajra will seal. Although his demonic chi net had been shattered by Chu Xiu's great Vajra will imprint, he had successfully blocked the explosive power of the great Vajra will imprint. Immediately after, an Azura hand descended and powerful demonic chi erupted, directly crushing Chu Xiu's great Vajra will imprint. The great Vajra will seal fell several times in a row, but Tong Kaitai used this method to break it. Chu Xiu furrowed his brows as he tapped his fingers together. In an instant, thunderous explosions rang out and the power of the Buddhist voice was deafening. Chu Xiu displayed his outer lion seal, but Tong Kaitai seemed to have long been prepared for it. All the blood, qi, and demonic energy in his body filled his ears, and he actually used his own inner force and blood to resist Chu Xiu's outer lion seal. Although a trace of blood flowed from his ears under the powerful collision of Chu Xiu's power, his slightly clumsy method successfully blocked Chu Xiu's outer lion seal. In fact, it didn't even affect him in the slightest. After a few moves, Chu Xiu suddenly frowned. He felt that something was wrong. He seemed to have already guessed what Tong Kaitai was planning. He wanted to exhaust himself to death. Although Chu Xiu had only exchanged blows with Tong Kaitai once to probe him, he could faintly sense that Tong Kaitai's martial skills leaned towards the offensive type. Thus, Tong Kaitai would definitely not adopt such a cowardly stance when fighting. And now, Tong Kaitai was spending so much effort to block Chu Xiu's great Vajra will seal, and even used the stupidest method to block Chu Xiu's outer lion seal. There was only one goal for him to do this, and that was to exhaust Chu Xiu's strength and inner force. Tong Kaitai used this method to fight with Chu Xiu, but in fact, the one who consumed the most energy was himself. But the repercussions from Chu Xiu's previous fight with Shen Bai could not be eliminated so quickly. To completely recover, even with the glazed golden thread goo, it would take a day. So if this continued, the one who would suffer would still be Chu Xiu. Looking at Tong Kaitai, Chu Xiu sneered while fighting, "I didn't expect it. Everyone says that you, Tong Kaitai, act crazily and are no different from a lunatic. But in fact, you are the most cunning one." Tong Kaitai said indifferently, "Killing also requires one's brain. If I really didn't have a brain, I'm afraid I would have been cut into pieces countless times by those cowards in Celestial Master Manor. Chu Xiu, this time, your heart is destined to be mine. I want to dig it open and see what's in your heart." Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and said, "You want to drag it out until Xiahou Wujiang comes to help you? That's a good idea, but unfortunately, you chose the wrong target. You overestimate Xiahou Wujiang and underestimate Luo Feiheng and the others." Tong Kaitai was not an idiot. Although he wanted to exhaust Chu Xiu to death, he had no intention of completely dying with Chu Xiu. So, he was still only exhausting Chu Xiu. When Xiahou Wujiang was finished, the two of them would join forces to kill Chu Xiu. Then, they would both get what they needed. But when he looked at Xiahou Wujiang, he couldn't help but call Xiahou Wujiang an idiot in his heart. Tong Kaitai was already able to do his best to stall Chu Xiu, but Xiahou Wujiang dropped the ball at this time. It was simply embarrassing. Even though Xiahou Wujiang had already reached the three-flower realm, he was still being suppressed by Luo Feihong and the other two in a 3-on-1 battle. The Xiahou clan's imperial spirit technique could use mental strength to forcibly control a warrior to fight for them, just like a puppet. But among the three people at present, although Xia Xiaolu's strength and realm were not as good as Xiahou Wujiang's, he had a tenacious mind and could completely rely on his own willpower to resist the imperial spirit technique. And Luo Feiheng was even more so. He had once betrayed his family, although that was in the future. Even Mo Tianlin's mind had become a lot more tenacious after almost being humiliated by Xiahou Wujiang. At this time, he wouldn't fall for it so easily. Under the joint attack of the three people, the effect of the imperial spirit technique was reduced to the extreme. He was still being chased by three physical invulnerability realm warriors. Among them, the most outstanding was Luo Feiheng. Her blood spear red kite was said to have used the blood of several martial arts grandmasters and several kinds of raptors as fuel to refine the embryo. In the end, after the blood spear red kite was formed, it had an extremely strong blood qi. When it attacked, it was extremely violent. The effect of the Xiahou clan's imperial spirit technique was directly reduced to the extreme when it came to her. So after the two sides exchanged more than 10 moves, Xiahou Wujiang even began to lose and retreat step by step. Being forced to the extreme by the joint attack of the three, Xiahou Wujiang's eyes revealed a cold light. He didn't use the killer move of the imperial spirit technique just now because he was afraid of hurting Luo Feiheng. But right now, this woman didn't care about his face at all and directly attacked to kill. Then, Xiahou Wujiang didn't need to hold back. If he was really defeated by the three of them together, that would be really embarrassing. Light golden divine light burst out from Xiahou Wujiang's body. This was his gang qi, which wasn't very strong. After all, Xiahou clan's main cultivation was psychic energy. But at this time, Xiahou Wujiang pulled his hands horizontally, and the gang qi in his body seemed to condense into the strings of a zither. His own psychic energy was completely condensed, and he plucked the zither strings. In an instant, there was a violent explosion that resounded through the mind. Imperial Spirit Zither Sound. This was a secret technique of the Xiahou clan's Imperial Spirit technique. With the gang qi as the strings and psychic energy as the hands, it played a soul-calming song and directly attacked the opponent's psychic energy. Only this kind of attack that could be transmitted on the spiritual level could be considered a true primordial spirit's secret technique. The three people who bore the brunt of the attack suddenly groaned. The sharp pain that resounded in their heads made it impossible for them to attack again. Among them, Mo Tianlin, who had a slightly weaker cultivation, even spat out a mouthful of blood on the spot. But at this time, Luo Feiheng forced herself to continue taking out her blood spear red kite. Regardless of the damage to her body, she poured endless power of qi and blood into the long spear, and when the spear fell, the cry of a phoenix soared to the sky. Spear users had always been the kind of martial artists with majestic martial arts, and it was really rare for a woman like Luo Feiheng to use such a majestic martial arts technique. Moreover, Luo Feiheng didn't hold back at all with this spear. She had been unhappy with Xiahou Wujiang for a long time. Not only did the other party pester her all day long and say those disgusting words, but he also wanted to bewitch the Luo family and let the Luo family form a marriage alliance with the Xiahou clan. This was simply wishful thinking. Therefore, when Luo Feiheng's furious spear fell, a majestic bloody shadow fell across the sky. Xiahou Wujiang pointed out with a finger, and the divine control weapon condensation was invincible. This divine control finger was also a martial art technique in the divine control technique. It used one's own power as a medium to pour spiritual power into it, reaching the level of influencing the other party's mind and even controlling them. But at this time, facing Luo Feiheng's furious spear, Xiahou Wujiang's divine control finger was directly shattered, but at the same time, Luo Feiheng was also attacked by the spiritual power in the divine control finger, and there was a moment of absent-mindedness. But at this time, Xiahou Wujiang wasn't having a good time either. After taking on Luo Feiheng's stunning spear, his arm had already begun to tremble. But in the end, Xiahou Wujiang didn't say anything and just turned to leave. This time, everyone was a little confused. What did Xiahou Wujiang mean by this? Of course, at this time, Everyone didn't see that Xiahou Wujiang's internal organs had already been shaken by Luo Feiheng's spear to the point that his blood and qi were boiling. If he didn't leave, he would probably vomit blood on the spot and embarrass himself. But when Xiahou Wujiang left, Tong Kaitai almost vomited blood in anger. He was forcefully resisting Chu Xiu, but in the end, Xiahou Wujiang retreated at this time. How could there be such a scam? Chu Xiu sneered and said, "As I said, you have underestimated Luo Feiheng and the others, and also overestimated Xiahou Wujiang." Chu Xiu didn't have confidence in Xia Xiaolu and Mo Tianlin, and he didn't understand their strength, but he had confidence in Luo Feiheng. For the future Luo Feiheng to have such achievements, one could imagine Luo Feiheng's true strength. "Xiahou Wujiang is leaving, you stay here." Although Chu Xiu had internal injuries, his eyes still revealed a hint of murderous intent. The wisdom fist seal fell with a loud bang, imprisoning the space, and rendering heaven and earth useless. Since Tong Kaitai was courting death, he would solve this trouble today. Chapter 256. Xiahou Wujiang's departure had directly trapped Tong Kaitai here. With Chu Xiu's strength, even if he was seriously injured now, Tong Kaitai was not sure that he could defeat Chu Xiu, not to mention that there were still Luo Feiheng and the other two eyeing him covetously. By the time they recovered, he would not be able to escape under the siege of the four. So at this moment, Tong Kaitai directly made a decision: escape. However, under Chu Xiu's wisdom fist seal, the surrounding space was sealed, and his figure seemed to be trapped in a swamp, unable to break free. Chu Xiu's red sleeve blade was unsheathed, and the blood-refined divine aura sprinkled down like a torrential downpour. The sudden burst of power made Tong Kaitai struggle to resist. Fortunately, Chu Xiu wasn't in his peak condition, so his wisdom fist seal didn't last too long. After Tong Kaitai broke free from the wisdom fist seal, the demonic aura around his body skyrocketed. Even his body was completely enveloped by the demonic aura. The surrounding demonic aura lingered around him, as though he had transformed into a ghost god from the legends of the wilderness. It was extremely terrifying. The claw that stretched for several feet fell, and Tong Kaitai's whole body's gang qi had condensed in his claw. The power was immeasurable, and it crashed down on Chu Xiu. This claw was like Tong Kaitai's Azura claw, but it did not seem like it. The claw was condensed with a powerful demonic aura, which was actually mixed with a strong evil blood aura. The red sleeve blade in Chu Xiu's hand also erupted with demonic aura. The second blade of the Avicii three blades fell, and the demonic blade collided with the demonic claw. In an instant, the demonic aura dispersed, and even the arena became a lot colder. The blades smashed the demonic claw, but at the same time, Chu Xiu's Avicii three blades was also broken. However, Tong Kaitai's figure in front of him turned into a black shadow and ran away. He actually began to escape the moment he attacked. It should be said that he did not intend to fight with Chu Xiu at all. The surrounding people were stunned. Tong Kaitai's performance seemed to be a little timid, which was somewhat inconsistent with his crazy way of doing things. Chu Xiu's hand formed the inner binding seal, and his speed instantly exploded to the extreme. While chasing Tong Kaitai, he said coldly, "The Mirror Lake Villa has been sealed by the array. Even if you escape, where can you escape to?" At this time, Luo Feiheng and the others recovered from the battle with Xiahou Wujiang and gradually surrounded Tong Kaitai. Tong Kaitai smiled and said, "Of course I escaped outside. Look over there, even God is helping me." Just as Chu Xiu was exchanging blows with Tong Kaitai, the outcome of the battle between the Phaseless Demon Sect and the Hidden Sword Villa had also been decided. He really could not understand why Chu Xiu would choose to chase after him like a madman, even going so far as to burn his essence blood, something that would harm both himself and others. Even when Chu Xiu had been fighting Shenbai, he had not been so desperate. Although he attacked Chu Xiu several times, in fact, he really did not cause any actual harm to Chu Xiu. So why did Chu Xiu do things so resolutely? Was he the madman, or was he the madman? But at this time, Tong Kaitai could not care so much, because Chu Xiu in front of him had already slashed with his saber. As the saber fell, the boundless demonic aura suddenly shrouded the red sleeve saber in his hand and his whole body. Shrill ghost howl sounded. Avicii Hell, Eternal Fall. Tong Kaitai was very familiar with this saber, because Chu Xiu used this saber just now to defeat Shen Bai. But everyone had seen the consumption of the saber just now. It was absolutely not easy for Chu Xiu to use such a saber. As a result, he used it for the second time in a short time. How much did he want Tong Kaitai to die? In the face of this terrifying saber, Tong Kaitai gritted his teeth. The blue veins and blood vessels on his arm soared, and countless blood mist lingered on it. When the claw fell, it was no longer a demonic claw, but a bloody claw stained with endless blood mist. Blood-weeping demon hand. This was Tong Kaitai's real trump card, but it consumed the blood chi of his whole body. Even after using it, his arm would be temporarily crippled for a period of time. The long saber stained with the demonic aura of hell slashed through the blood-weeping demon hand, and the gloomy demonic aura tore the demonic hand. The scene when these two people fought was simply a killing between the demonic path. As the saber fell, Chu Xiu's face was incomparably pale. The demonic aura was surging, and even his eyes were filled with a strong demonic aura. But looking at Tong Kaitai, who was opposite him, after taking 3 of Chu Xiu's Avicii Dao sabers, his injuries were even more serious than Chu Xiu's. His entire right arm was already dripping with blood, and the flesh was torn apart. In some places, even the eerie white bone was exposed. Madman! Tong Kaitai cursed in his heart. Many people in the pugilistic world scolded him as a madman, but Tong Kaitai now believed that Chu Xiu was the madman from the bottom of his heart. There was a reason why he acted crazily and killed people, but he could not understand why Chu Xiu was so relentless in trying to kill him, even at the cost of both of them suffering. What exactly did he want? However, he could not care so much now. Now that he had lost an arm, if he did not hurry and escape, his fate would be miserable. Not to mention that Luo Feiheng and the rest were chasing after him. Tong Kaitai himself also had many enemies in Jianghu. Even someone who had nothing to do with him could easily hit him when he was down, when he was seriously injured, wanting to kill him and go to Mount Longhu for the bounty. But just as he was about to escape, Chu Xiu suddenly put away his saber and formed a seal with both hands. It was a very simple seal. His left hand was lightly clenched into a fist, and his right thumb was lightly pressed against the left index finger. However, such a simple hand seal blossomed with a dazzling radiance in Chu Xiu's hands. It was as dazzling as the sun. May all living beings be perfect, and let out supreme light. Preamble Formula, Perfect Aquarius Seal. Feeling the power contained in the perfect Aquarius seal, Tong Kaitai roared in anger. Boundless demonic aura erupted from his body, but in an instant, it was swallowed by the endless light. Under this power, everything would be melted and destroyed. The light scattered, and the demonic aura had completely dissipated. A soft sound rang out, and Tong Kaitai's body was sent flying to the side like a broken rag doll. His face was already beyond recognition, and it was almost impossible to tell that he was human. At this time, Chu Xiu's face was frighteningly pale, as if he was a zombie. As his breathing sounded, the skin around Chu Xiu's meridian split open, and blood gushed out like a fountain. It was incomparably terrifying, and those who did not know would think that Chu Xiu had been killed by 1,000 cuts. Seeing this scene, Luo Feiheng and the rest who rushed over from behind were stunned. The other cultivators were also stunned. In the past, they all thought that Tong Kaitai was a madman, but now they were sure that Chu Xiu was the real madman. In their opinion, the enmity between Chu Xiu and Tong Kaitai was not that big. Tong Kaitai had provoked Chu Xiu twice, and it was not a big deal. At most, it could be considered as 2 small conflicts. But in the end, because of such a small matter, Chu Xiu was willing to kill Tong Kaitai on the spot, even at the cost of both sides suffering. What kind of enmity did he have? Was it really necessary? Everyone present shuddered and looked at Chu Xiu with a hint of fear in their eyes. Sometimes, people who could not be seen through were the most terrifying. Obviously, they could not see through Chu Xiu. This person simply could not be judged by common sense. Chapter 257. Most people in the Jianghu were used to measuring everything by benefits, and those who violated the rules of benefits were either fools or lunatics. In their eyes, Chu Xiu was the latter. This kind of person was the most untouchable, because it was impossible to guess what the other party wanted to do through benefits. In fact, Chu Xiu was also a realist, and he also valued benefits. But now, Tong Kaitai had touched Chu Xiu's reverse scale. In order to completely eliminate a hidden danger, it was worth it to pay some price, although this price seemed a little big to others. Luo Feiheng and the others rushed over, and they frowned when they saw Chu Xiu's appearance. Mo Tianlin asked directly, "Brother Chu, can you still hold on?" "I say, you're too desperate. That Tong Kaitai is arrogant, and he has long been wanted by the celestial master abode of Mount Longhu. Even if he escapes today, he will be caught and brought to the celestial master abode to be punished sooner or later. Why are you doing this?" Chu Xiu formed the lion's seal in his hand and began to suppress the injuries in his body. At the same time, he threw a handful of elixirs into his mouth and said faintly, "I want to kill him because I want to kill him. If the celestial master abode wants to kill him, it's their business. This is not the same." Chu Xiu's reason made them speechless, but when they thought of Chu Xiu's history of intermittently going crazy, they all understood. The others also thought of the time in front of the Water Cloud Monastery, when Chu Xiu went crazy and fought against 100 people, killing them all. Obviously, this time, Chu Xiu might have gone crazy again, and that was why he desperately wanted to kill Tong Kaitai even if he was seriously injured. When they thought of this, those who wanted to be enemies with Chu Xiu in the future had to think twice. When Chu Xiu was in a normal state, he might still care about one's identity and status, and consider the gains and losses of killing one, and so on. However, when Chu Xiu went crazy, all of this was uncertain. Moreover, the people present were a little emotional. This time, Tong Kaitai also courted death by jumping out to provoke Chu Xiu twice. In fact, Tong Kaitai was still very careful in the pugilistic world. He had been chased by the experts of Mount Longhu's celestial master abode for so long, and he had relied on his perception to evade them. But this time, when faced with Chu Xiu's direct attack, he couldn't even dodge. At this time, the embryo of the magic weapon in the center of the 5 rings had basically taken shape, and it was in the shape of a long saber. However, the aura was extremely unstable, and it was not. And it was not. It was not. It was not yet. Everyone could guess this because Mo Yezi was not here to clean up the mess. Although it was using an array to refine, this kind of refining technique was definitely not that simple. As long as the array was set up, it would be fine. Otherwise, wouldn't this array be equivalent to a refining grandmaster? However, Chu Xiu did not care. He had an idea in his mind, and he could try it now. Chu Xiu took out a secret box, which contained 2 fragments. They were the fragments of the Sky Devil Order that Chu Xiu got from the Ghost King's sect and the Zhang siblings. Chu Xiu took out a secret box from his bosom. Inside it were 2 shard-like things. It was the God's Devil Order shard that Chu Xiu got from the Ghost King's sect and the Zhang siblings. This thing was forged from the same material as the embryo in front of him. They came from the same source. If he threw them in as well, would there be any changes to the divine weapon? Wiping away the blood on his face, Chu Xiu said to Mo Tianlin and the other 2, "Guys, please protect me." Chu Xiu wiped the blood off his face and said to Mo Tianlin and the other 2, "I'll have to trouble you to protect me." In fact, it was fine even if they did not help, because everyone was scared out of their wits. In fact, it didn't matter even if they didn't help, because everyone present was scared out of their wits. They hadn't forgotten Chu Xiu's crazy look of vowing to kill Tong Kaitai just now. Although Chu Xiu looked miserable at this time, who could guarantee that Chu Xiu didn't have the strength to fight now? Therefore, even though the embryo of the divine weapon was right in front of them, none of them dared to have any ideas about it. Chu Xiu directly threw the 2 fragments of the god's devil token into the furnace. Although Mo Tianlin and the others were curious about what it was, they did not ask too much. After the 2 fragments of the Sky Devil Order were thrown into the furnace, the Sky Devil Order that was not contaminated with demonic chi was the first to fuse with the embryo, causing the saber-shaped embryo to swell up and undergo some changes. After seeing this scene, Chu Xiu's eyes suddenly lit up. It's effective. Although the second Sky Devil Order had fused with the saber embryo began to tremble violently. The second fragment of the Sky Devil Order was stained with powerful and pure demonic chi, but the fragment of the Sky Devil Order from the Ghost King's sect and the original saber embryo did not. Chu Xiu didn't know why he obtained the piece from the Ghost King's sect, but the fragment of the Sky Devil Order that the Hidden Sword Villa gave to Mo Yezi was also stained with a lot of demonic chi, so Mo Yezi must have used some method to erase it. After all, what he wanted to refine was a divine weapon. Although it was said that a demonic weapon was also a divine weapon, it would not sound good to say it out loud. Therefore, the demonic chi on the Sky Devil Order was erased by Mo Yezi. However, now that Chu Xiu had thrown in another fragment of the Sky Devil Order that was surging with demonic chi, the blade was once again tainted with a trace of demonic nature. However, he didn't know what material Mo Yezi had added to the original embryo, but it actually caused the saber embryo and the demonic nature to repel each other, making it impossible for the 2 to fuse. Chu Xiu frowned. If that was the case, he might have overreached himself. It was possible that the saber embryo and the 2 fragments of the Sky Devil Order would be shattered. After the 2 sides were in a deadlock for a full 15 minutes, the demonic chi finally gained the upper hand. A lump of iron made of unknown material was forcefully squeezed out of the saber embryo. The Sky Devil Order that was stained with demonic chi completely fused with the saber embryo, and the originally silver-white saber embryo instantly turned pitch black. Mo Tianlin shook his head and said, "It's a pity that it didn't become a divine weapon in the end. However, from the looks of it, it definitely has the 6th transformation." After a divine weapon was refined, there would be a phenomenon of light appearing, but this saber did not. It was obvious that something had gone wrong, and it was a step away from becoming a divine weapon. Chu Xiu, on the other hand, was mentally prepared. The problem should be with the thing that repelled the demonic chi. However, although the expected divine weapon did not succeed, a 6th transformation treasure was still useful to Chu Xiu. The most important thing was that this saber actually had the foundation to become a divine weapon. After all, whether it was the Sky Devil Order or some of the materials Mo Yezi had added, they were definitely some precious items. The materials determined that this saber had the foundation to become a divine weapon. At this moment, the sound of a saber trembling could be heard. The long saber actually directly rushed towards Chu Xiu. Mo Tianlin wanted to intercept it, but Chu Xiu raised his hand, indicating that Mo Tianlin did not need to. He did not feel any killing intent from the saber. Chu Xiu stretched out his hand and directly held the long saber in his hand. However, in an instant, the long saber began to absorb Chu Xiu's blood, causing Chu Xiu's complexion to become even paler. This long saber had absorbed a lot of Chu Xiu's sharp chi, and it originally had a trace of Chu Xiu's mark. At this time, after absorbing Chu Xiu's blood, the saber had completely established a connection with its owner. Even if others obtained this saber, they would not be able to use its full power. Fortunately, this saber did not absorb too much of Chu Xiu's chi and blood. However, after absorbing Chu Xiu's chi and blood, the shape of the saber also changed a little. At this time, everyone carefully looked at this long saber. Whether it was Mo Tianlin, Xia Xiaolu, or Luo Feiheng, their first impression of this saber was that it was very evil. It was a very evil saber. Normally, after a weapon was forged, the refiner would refine the appearance of the weapon. Normally, this saber should be the same. However, because Mo Yezi was not present, this saber was only in the shape of a simple saber. The entire body of the saber was slightly longer than the red sleeve saber, but it was still long and narrow. The blade and hilt were both pitch black, and the shape was very simple. However, the truly evil thing was that after it absorbed Chu Xiu's blood, traces of bloodlines appeared on the body of the saber. At the point where the blade and hilt connected, the bloodlines converged and condensed into something that looked like a scarlet eye, adding a bit of strangeness. Holding the long saber tightly and feeling the power within it, Chu Xiu could roughly determine that the grade of this saber should be a top-grade 6th Revolution precious weapon. It was only one step away from becoming a divine weapon. Moreover, its nature was the same as the blood spear Red Kite in Luo Feiheng's hands. They were both precious weapons with the potential to become divine weapons. In terms of value, it was far beyond ordinary 6th rank precious weapons. Mo Tianlin said, "Give it a name." Normally, a weapon should be named by the forger, but now, I think even Master Mo Yezi will not be able to recognize this weapon. Since it was forged by you, you should naturally be the one to name it. Chu Xiu glanced at the long saber in his hand. On the black long saber, there were evil bloodlines dancing. After thinking for a while, Chu Xiu directly said, "Demonic dance." Using the demonic order as the main material, it naturally had to be named demonic. Similarly, the demonic dance also had the meaning of demonic dance, magnificent and dangerous at the same time. Mo Tianlin shook his head and said, "Brother Chu, I'm afraid this name is a bit of a taboo. This thing was originally forged from the demonic order of the Kunlun devil cult, and you directly named it demonic dance. This is equivalent to once again reminding the people of Jianghu of the connection between this saber and the Kunlun devil cult." Chu Xiu indifferently said, "In the past, it might have been a bit of a taboo, but Hidden Sword Mountain Villa dared to cooperate with Mo Yezi to restore the demon sword Everlasting Yearning. Compared to them, I am just a small sorcerer in the presence of a great sorcerer. Even if the sky falls, there will be tall people to hold it up. Now, no one will pay attention to me." Mo Tianlin pondered for a moment and realized that it made sense. The God Weapon Conference this time was very noisy at the beginning, but it was estimated that it would be even more noisy after it ended. Chapter 258. He didn't get the God weapon, but Chu Xiu got a precious weapon, so it wasn't a big loss. The entire Mirror Lake Villa was empty, and Chu Xiu was also heavily injured. Therefore, Chu Xiu directly followed Mo Tianlin and the others back to the Ji State Prefecture to recuperate and pay attention to the movements in the Jianghu. This time, Chu Xiu's injuries were a little more serious, mainly the damage to his meridians. He used a perfect Aquarius seal to blast Tong Kai Tai to death, but the backlash of this martial art directly tore the meridians in Chu Xiu's body. The last 3 styles of the 9 words formula consumed an extremely shocking amount of inner strength, and the explosive power was also a test of Chu Xiu's endurance. At that moment, the true qi directly tore Chu Xiu's meridians. Now, it would take a certain amount of time to repair. Even with the glazed golden silk goo and Chu Xiu's amazing recovery ability, it would still take him 10 days to half a month. During the time that Chu Xiu recuperated, the outside world was in an uproar because of this God Weapon Conference. Of course, this had nothing to do with Chu Xiu. Half a month later, Chu Xiu's injuries were almost healed, and he directly came out of seclusion. Hearing the news that Chu Xiu had come out of seclusion, Mo Tianlin and the others all came. However, after the 3 of them pushed the door open and entered, they all looked at Chu Xiu with a strange expression. Chu Xiu was surprised and said, "Why are you guys looking at me like that?" Mo Tianlin coughed and said, "Your ranking on the Longhu list has changed. Do you know about it?" Chu Xiu nodded and said, "I expected it." He had already stepped into the 3-flower realm and was in the limelight at the God Weapon Convention. If he still couldn't improve his ranking on the Longhu leaderboard, then the fairness of the wind-sweeping tower would be questioned. Mo Tianlin had a strange expression on his face as he asked, "But do you know what your rank is on the Longhu leaderboard?" "Top 10. 6th place." Mo Tianlin slammed the table. After hearing Mo Tianlin's words, Chu Xiu did not expect wind-sweeping tower to raise his ranking so high and even push Nie Donglu down. Rubbing his chin, Chu Xiu murmured, "That's not right. I have nothing to do with wind-sweeping tower. why would they rank me so highly? Xia Xiaolu said, that's reasonable. After all, you crippled Shenbai and killed Tong Kaitai in this god weapon convention. Although Shenbai was not ranked on the Longhu leaderboard, based on the strength he had displayed, he was definitely in the top 10 of the Longhu leaderboard. As for Tong Kaitai, he was ranked 13th on the Longhu leaderboard when he was in the physical invulnerability realm. Now that he has stepped into the three-flower realm, he was still killed by you. This is also a battle record. In this god weapon convention, you basically killed and crippled 2 warriors who could be in the top 10 of the Longhu leaderboard. This ranking is very normal. Also, Nie Donglu is a little disappointing. He has no battle record and no reputation. Wind's sweeping tower will naturally lower his ranking. This time, you didn't just push him down by 1 place. Instead, you directly pushed Nie Donglu out of the top 10 and into the 11th place. I heard that Nie Donglu has been in seclusion for a while, preparing to break through to the three-flower realm. He originally relied on his reputation to be in the top 10 of the Longhu leaderboard. Now that he has given up his reputation to cultivate, he can't blame the Longhu leaderboard for lowering his ranking. If he also had the strength of the three-flower realm, then according to the rules, Wind's sweeping tower would only lower his ranking by 1 place. They wouldn't have dropped him out of the top 10 like they did now. When talking about Nie Donglu, Xia Xiaolu's tone also carried a hint of disdain. He was the kind of person who valued strength above all. The people he hated the most were people like Nie Donglu, who only knew how to seek personal gain and scheme. Although Nie Donglu calculated his ranking to be in the top 10 of the Longhu leaderboard, it was very unstable. Just like how he was now, once his reputation couldn't keep up, he would immediately be pushed down a lot. Only strength was fundamental. At this time, Mo Tianlin pointed at Luo Feiheng and said, this time, you're not the only one who performed well. Luo Feiheng is the same. She is now in the 10th place of the Longhu leaderboard, directly pushing Xiahou Wujiang down. To be honest, Xiahou Wujiang is quite unlucky. Everyone else rose in the rankings after stepping into the three-flower realm, but he fell, and by 2 places at that. He is now behind Nie Donglu in the 12th place. There are external invulnerability realm warriors in the top 10 of the Longhu leaderboard, but as a three-flower realm warrior, he is the only one who hasn't stepped into the top 10 of the Longhu leaderboard. When Mo Tianlin said this, there was a look of schadenfreude on his face. For him, he was naturally happy that his enemy, Xiahou Wujiang, was unlucky. Of course, this time, Xiahou Wujiang was courting death himself. If he hadn't jumped out to fight Chu Xiu, he wouldn't have been defeated by Luo Feiheng. Although the situation was a bit complicated at the beginning, it was actually Luo Feiheng and the other 2 who besieged him. However, the main force was Luo Feiheng, so this achievement was naturally attributed to Luo Feiheng. On the other side, Luo Feiheng wasn't modest. Instead, he smiled proudly. Not only did he teach Xiahou Wujiang a lesson, but he was also able to step into the top 10 of the Longhu leaderboard. It felt good. At this time, Mo Tianlin suddenly said to Xia Xiaolu, this time, it seems like you're the unluckiest one. Brother Chu and Feihong's Longhu leaderboard have risen, but my ranking hasn't changed. You, on the other hand, have been squeezed out by 1 place. Previously, Xia Xiaolu was ranked 12th on the Longhu leaderboard. Now that Chu Xiu had stepped in, others like Nie Donglu and Xiahou Wujiang, although the leaderboard had changed, were still in the top 12. Therefore, Xia Xiaolu was naturally squeezed out by 1 place. Since Tong Kaitai, who was originally ranked 13th, was killed, Mo Tianlin, who was ranked behind him, didn't change his ranking. Xia Xiaolu shrugged indifferently. He was convinced by Chu Xiu's strength. Even if he was squeezed out by 1 place, he didn't have anything to say. That's right, in the end, who has the demon sword everlasting yearning? Chu Xiu asked. Mo Tianlin put away his teasing attitude and said in a deep voice, speaking of which, it's quite interesting. This matter actually ended in a lose-lose situation. The phaseless demon sect pursued relentlessly. After the Hidden Sword Mountain Villa thought that they couldn't escape, Qing Tingfeng actually chose to forcefully activate the demon's sword Everlasting Yearning that hadn't completely recovered. Although it exploded with astonishing power, the Everlasting Yearning wasn't something he could control. Therefore, after he heavily injured Situ Li and the other martial artists of the Phaseless Demon Sect, he was also heavily injured by the backlash. Most importantly, you've also seen the appearance of the demon's sword Everlasting Yearning. It hadn't completely recovered, and after being activated, it actually shattered. A portion of the fragments were obtained by the Phaseless Demon Sect, while the rest were obtained by the Hidden Sword Mountain Villa. The leaders of both sides were heavily injured, and the people below them were also injured. If they forcefully fought, they would most likely perish together. Therefore, the Phaseless Demon Sect chose to retreat. Chu Xiu nodded. This Qing Tingfeng was really able to do it, to actually forcefully activate the demonic weapon. Although the Everlasting Yearning was a demon weapon, it was still a 9th transformation treasure sword. In the Hidden Sword Mountain Villa, it was the kind that could be worshipped. In the end, Qing Tingfeng was forced to forcefully activate its power, harming others and himself. It was obvious that he was forced into a dead end by the Phaseless Demon Sect. Anyway, in the end, everyone would split up, and no one would benefit. Mo Tianlin sighed and said, "Speaking of which, the ones who benefited the most from this God Weapon Conference are us, the younger generation martial artists. The others didn't get any benefits." The Phaseless Demon Sect suffered heavy losses. Although they didn't let the Hidden Sword Mountain Villa get the Everlasting Yearning, it caused the Everlasting Yearning to be completely destroyed. It was the same for the Hidden Sword Mountain Villa. Originally, they planned to hold the God Weapon Conference on the surface to earn some reputation, and secretly repair the Everlasting Yearning. However, they didn't expect to suffer a double loss this time. After such a thing happened, the Hidden Sword Mountain Villa did gain some reputation, but it was all scolded and ridiculed by the Hidden Sword Mountain Villa for being blinded by greed. Even Mo Yizi, who knew that the Hidden Sword Mountain Villa took out the demon's sword Everlasting Yearning, still wanted to help repair it, was also scolded by many people. After everyone chatted for a while, Mo Tianlin asked, "So many things happened in the God Weapon Conference. Next, I need to go back to the Mo clan to report. Where are the three of you planning to go?" Chu Xiu said, "This time, I came with the mission of the Guanzhong torture room. Now that the mission is completed, I naturally need to go back to the Guanzhong torture room to report." Xia Xiaolu shrugged and said, "This time, I came out to relax. I've only been out for a short period of time, so I won't go back. I plan to continue walking around in Eastern Qi before going back." Luo Feiheng snorted and said, "Yesterday, someone from the Luo clan sent me a message, telling me to go back quickly. Xiahou Wujiang, that bastard, lost and went back to the Xiahou clan to complain, and the Xiahou clan reported it to the Luo clan. When I go back, I will definitely be scolded by my old man." When saying this, Luo Feiheng's tone revealed a hint of unwillingness. If it were Mo Tianlin who defeated Xiahou Wujiang, then no matter how timid the Mo clan was, they would not show weakness to the Xiahou clan. Instead, they would put in more effort to cultivate Mo Tianlin. But Luo Feiheng was different. After all, she was a woman, and was not worthy of the Luo clan's full cultivation. So, if she defeated Xiahou Wujiang, it would not bring glory to the Luo clan, but would cause trouble for the Luo clan. The people present did not speak. Mo Tianlin and Xia Xiaolu knew the situation of the Luo clan, and Chu Xiu also knew what Luo Feiheng would face in the future. It was useless to say this kind of thing. But at this time, Chu Xiu suddenly said, "Everyone, I have a suggestion now. We can use each other's strength." "What suggestion?" the three people all asked. Chu Xiu glanced at the three people and said, "At present, although we are all juniors in our respective forces, we also have some strength and influence in our hands. Moreover, there is no conflict or hostility between our forces. How about this, the four of us join forces and secretly establish an organization, not involving the forces behind us, only to provide resources and help to each other. What do you think?" Chapter 259. Chu Xiu's suggestion immediately piqued the interest of the three. Mo Tianlin muttered, "Brother Chu, tell us in detail, what do you mean?" Chu Xiu replied, "What I mean is actually very simple. Just like how the three of you helped me today, I will remember this favor, and I will definitely return it in the future. However, today's matter is just a coincidence. If we join forces, and one side needs help, as long as the others have the ability, they will come to help. Of course, this help isn't in vain. Even blood brothers should clearly calculate their debts. Those who ask for help can either repay it with things or with favors. Things like benefits are the most unreliable, but at the same time, they are also the most reliable. Sometimes, an alliance formed with benefits is even more solid than just relying on loyalty. To sum it up in one sentence, the organization I want to establish is only for ourselves, and not for the powers behind us. Does everyone understand?" Mo Tianlin and the others nodded, their faces revealing contemplative expressions. They naturally understood what Chu Xiu meant. They were themselves, and the powers behind them were the powers behind them. This alliance formed by Chu Xiu was only for themselves. Sometimes, when they needed help, it would be related to their own sex predicament. For example, Chu Xiu, his time in the Guanzhong torture room could be said to be fraught with danger. As a newcomer, and with a superior like Wei Jiuduan, it was impossible for Chu Xiu not to plot against each other. There was also Mo Tianlin. Although he was the number one person in the younger generation of the Mo family, there were countless people in the Mo family who wanted to see him suffer or drag him down. As for Luo Feiheng, needless to say, everyone knew about her situation. Xia Xiaolu should be the most relaxed among the people present. This was because his master was the World Alliance's Qinqing Di. As long as his master was present, he didn't have to worry about his position. Even so, there were still some people in the World Alliance who refused to accept him. In the past, they could only face this kind of predicament by themselves. Even if they were best friends, sometimes it was difficult for them to ask for help. And if it was as Chu Xiu said, and everyone established this organization, then although there would still be some friendship between them, it would be more of a relationship of benefits. The person who wanted to ask for help could also openly ask for help from others. At most, they would owe someone a favor in the future, and it would be enough for them to take it out. Chu Xiu continued, "Moreover, the organization we have established can also continue to recruit other people, whether they are rogue cultivators or sects. As long as you feel that they are reliable, you can be recruited into the organization, such as Brother Liu Fengxian. Brother Liu is an acquaintance of me and Brother Xie. He is absolutely reliable, and his strength is also outstanding. If you can find such a reliable expert when you need help, the benefits will definitely be far beyond your imagination." Hearing the scene described by Chu Xiu, the three people present were somewhat tempted. The three of them all had their own connections, and there were also many reliable ones. As long as they could pull them in, and let them feel the strength and convenience of the organization, they would naturally pull in a few more people. In this way, as long as there were no accidents in the middle, even if it was only 10 years, their organization would be like a rolling snowball, thoroughly expanding. Then what if someone betrays us? Brother Chu, the organization you want to establish is a big taboo whether it is you or us sects. Xia Xiaolu suddenly asked. For the various sects and families, they naturally hoped that their disciples would wholeheartedly pledge loyalty to their own organization. But now, they had secretly joined another organization, and had selfish motives. No matter where it was, this was something that the leaders of the sects and families could not tolerate. Chu Xiu smiled coldly and said, "What I hate the most are traitors. Since everyone can benefit from this organization, then those who attempt to destroy this organization will be everyone's enemy. Since he has already become everyone's enemy, then there's no need to say what kind of treatment he will receive." Mo Tianlin shivered when he heard this. If their organization could really develop to a certain level, and not just the few of them like they were now, then they would definitely be treated as enemies and traitors by everyone. That would definitely be a terrifying outcome. Luo Feiheng suddenly became interested and said, "This suggestion is not bad, I agree. Mo Tianlin said, I also have no objections. He had helped Chu Xiu, and Chu Xiu had also helped him. Both sides had a favor, so in theory, he had already tasted this benefit. If he could develop more people, then he would undoubtedly obtain even more benefits. Xia Xiaolu thought for a moment, then muttered, then who would be the most suitable person to manage our organization? While saying this, Xia Xiaolu stared at Chu Xiu. He was convinced by Chu Xiu, but only in terms of strength. However, he had never considered himself below Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu smiled and said, an organization with such simple rules doesn't need a leader, only a supervisor. Each of our members is actually a supervisor of each other. Hearing Chu Xiu say this, Xia Xiaolu nodded and said, all right, I also agree. At this time, Luo Feiheng suddenly said, wait, although we don't have many people, we are still an organization. How about we give it a resounding name? Mo Tianlin said, since we are prepared to absorb all the experts in the world, how about we call it the World Assembly? Xia Xiaolu rolled his eyes and said, are you preparing to provoke my world alliance? If you anger my master, I won't be able to do anything about it. Chu Xiu also thought in his heart, if you call it the World Assembly, what will Xiongba think? Then what do you think we should call it? Mo Tianlin was somewhat unconvinced and asked back. Xia Xiaolu patted the floating feather blade behind him and said, everyone uses blades and swords, how about we call it the Alliance of Blades and Swords? Luo Feiheng pointed at the bloodied spear red kite next to him with some dissatisfaction and snorted, are those who don't use blades and swords allowed to join? What kind of lousy name is this? Saying this, Luo Feiheng turned his gaze to Chu Xiu and said, these two fellows are somewhat unreliable. Since you are the one who suggested this, what do you want to call it? Chu Xiu pondered for a moment and said, we should establish an organization and secretly cooperate with each other. This kind of thing should be low-key. The name doesn't need to be too resounding, how about 9 Branch Hall? The three of them looked at each other, and Luo Feiheng asked curiously, 9 Branch Hall? What's so particular about it? Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, 90% of your strength, 10% of your results, and 10% of your leeway so that you won't exhaust yourself physically and mentally. You and I were born in the martial world, and in our lives, we will face countless life and death battles and struggle in this chaotic world. The reason I want to unite everyone and establish the 9 Branch Hall is so that everyone can have an easier time in this chaotic world. We only need to use 90% of our strength to accomplish 10% of our tasks, and we don't need to use all of our strength. That's why it's called the 9 Branch Hall. The three of them nodded, and all of them felt a bit emotional. The one who felt the most emotional was probably Luo Feiheng, who had a seemingly unreliable appearance. As a woman, she had to bear more than anyone else on her journey. At that moment, Chu Xiu took out another gold coin. This was the 9 dragon coin unique to the land of Eastern Qi. The land of Eastern Qi was rich and prosperous, so other than some normal copper and silver, the land of Eastern Qi also specially made this kind of gold coin as a normal transaction item. On it was engraved the scene of a branch of the Jianghu dynasty of Eastern Qi being taught a divine secret technique by 9 dragons. After the Lu dynasty took power, in order to show their magnanimity, they didn't ban the 9 dragon coin and continued to distribute it. Chu Xiu extended his hand, cut off a corner of the coin, and said, everyone in the world comes for benefits. The 9 Branch Hall isn't for loyalty, but for mutual benefits. So, no matter if it's the Tao or the demon, as long as they are reliable, as long as they have strength, they can join the 9 Branch Hall. This 9 dragon coin is our symbol. Whoever robs a new person into the 9 Branch Hall will leave their own martial imprint on the 9 dragon coin and give it to the new person to prove their identity. After all, we are all scattered throughout the martial world. If the person you robs in doesn't know anyone else and misunderstands you, it will be very awkward. Luo Feiheng and the others nodded. Chu Xiu had thought of these details very thoroughly. After the general discussion was over, everyone chatted for a while before leaving. Actually, no one cared too much about the 9 Branch Hall. Perhaps even they themselves could not imagine how this organization, which seemed like a game to them, would develop to such an extent in the end. Chu Xiu stood on the window sill of the inn and watched Mo Tianlin and the others leave. He played with the 9-dragon coin in his hand. He roped in Luo Feiheng and the others to establish the 9-branch hall on a whim. However, he already had this thought before. In this martial world, it was true that one was respected by strength, but the prerequisite was that one had the strength to fight against the world alone. Even if one reached the level of Dugu Weiwei and immortal Ning Xuanji in the past, one still wouldn't dare to say that one was unrivaled under the heavens. In the original plot, although his identity became the demon sect leader, he was far from reaching the level of Dugu Weiwei in the past. Now that the plot had begun to change, it was time for Chu Xiu to use his own advantages and develop a path that was beneficial to him. Establishing the 9-branch hall was one of his plans. Whether it was Lu Fengxian or Luo Feiheng, these outstanding characters in the original plot, Chu Xiu would do his best to befriend them. In the end, he would weave a large net, a net that would cover the entire martial world. Just now, when Xia Xiaolu asked if the 9-branch hall had a leader, Chu Xiu's answer was no. However, it was only for now. As for whether there would be one in the future, that was an unknown. Chapter 260. Since the matter with Eastern Qi had been settled, Chu Xiu did not want to stay here any longer. He chose to return to the Guanzhong torture room directly. When Chu Xiu returned to Guanzhong, all the cultivators he met along the way, whether they were of a higher position or stronger than Chu Xiu, all nodded to Chu Xiu as a greeting. As for those who were weaker than Chu Xiu in terms of strength and position, even if they were from the headquarters or from the punishment department, they all cupped their hands and greeted Chu Xiu respectfully. The Guanzhong torture room was very realistic. In the past, Chu Xiu was not very famous in the whole of Guanzhong. He was not even as famous as Yuqi, Zhongping, and the other young cultivators of the Guanzhong torture room. But now, after the God Weapon Convention, Chu Xiu had become 6th on the Longhu leaderboard. It could be said that he had become famous overnight. The Guanzhong Disciplinary Hall was not closed off. When the God Weapon Convention had just ended, they had already found out about the situation through the news from the pugilistic world's media. This time, Chu Xiu was representing the Guanzhong torture room to participate in the God Weapon Conference. So, the more attention Chu Xiu made in the God Weapon Conference, the more attention Guanzhong torture room would gain. As for jealousy, when there was a gap between you and someone, they might be jealous. But when the gap between you and that person was large enough, the jealousy would no longer exist. After all, it was a joke to say that you were jealous of a height that you could never reach in your lifetime. Just like how no one in the pugilistic world would be jealous of Dugu Weiwei and Ning Xuanji, because they were already legendary existences. Before Chu Xiu reached the entrance of the torture hall, he saw Chu Yuanxing coming over. He patted Chu Xiu's shoulder excitedly and said, "Brother Chu, you did a good job this time. You have greatly increased the reputation of the Guanzhong torture room." Strictly speaking, Chu Yuanxing was not a member of the Guanzhong torture room, but in fact, he was inseparable from the Guanzhong torture room. So, when Chu Xiu helped the Guanzhong torture room at the God Weapon Conference, he was also helping him. Chu Xiu smiled and said, "Big brother, you're too polite. Since I'm already a member of the Guanzhong Disciplinary Hall, I naturally have to think about the reputation of the Guanzhong Disciplinary Hall." Hearing this, Chu Yuanxing could not help but smile proudly. Speaking of which, he could be considered as the person who introduced Chu Xiu to the Guanzhong torture room. Back then, when Chu Xiu saved him, he could have chosen to give Chu Xiu other things to repay him for saving his life. But at that time, he did not know why he only wanted to introduce Chu Xiu to the Guanzhong torture room. Now, it seemed that he had made a good move. He had roped in a powerful person for the Guanzhong torture room. In the past, Chu Yuanxing had also recommended many people to join the Guanzhong torture room. But although those people were somewhat capable, they were generally mediocre. They were not as outstanding as Chu Xiu. But now, Chu Xiu had made a great contribution to the Guanzhong torture room. As the person who recommended Chu Xiu, he was also proud. By the way, Brother Chu, did anything major happen in the Guanzhong torture room recently? Chu Xiu asked. After all, he had been away for a few months. He did not know if there were any problems with his subordinates. Chu Yuanqing shook his head and said, nothing major, but there is something related to you. Oh? What is it? Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and asked. Chu Yuanqing smiled and said, you crippled swordmaster Fei Mo, an elite disciple of Sword King City's previous generation in Eastern Qi. This matter made Sword King City very angry. The Xinjiang Hall's Hall Master, Qinji Sword Sex Pei Zhonglin, personally came to Guanzhong's punishment hall half a month ago to seek an explanation from the Hall Master. He wanted to severely punish you and give Sword King City an explanation. I'm afraid those people from Sword King City are really used to being arrogant. Pei Zhonglin also doesn't know what he's doing. He dared to challenge the Hall Master as soon as he stepped into the Martial Dao Grandmaster stage. In the end, he was forced back by the Hall Master with a single move before he could even draw his sword. Chu Xiu nodded. In fact, he had already expected this. He was the face of the Guanzhong torture room. He had made a name for himself on behalf of the Guanzhong torture room, but the internal department of the Guanzhong torture room punished him because of this matter. It would chill the hearts of many martial artists in the Guanzhong torture room and make the Guanzhong torture room lose face. Of course, there was a limit to this. Chu Xiu only crippled Fei Mo, not Fang Qi Shao. Therefore, Sword King City only sent a hall master instead of the sect master. If Chu Xiu was really crazy and caused big trouble, Guan Siyu wouldn't be able to handle it even if she wanted to. By the way, big brother, is Hall Master Guan in the main hall? I have to report to Hall Master Guan first when I come back this time. Chu Xiu asked. Chu Yuanqing said, there are some things in the Guangdong area that require Hall Master to personally deal with. He will probably be back tomorrow. You stay here for a day first and report to Hall Master tomorrow. Also, tell me some details about the Divine Weapon Conference. Now the news of the Divine Weapon Conference is spread by the wind-sweeping pavilion. Some of the details are not clear. It is definitely better for you to explain as the person involved. Chu Xiu smiled and said, then I will have to trouble you today, big brother. As Chu Xiu spoke, he directly followed Chu Yuanqing to his courtyard. When Chu Xiu returned to the Guanzhong torture room, Shenbai, who had his cultivation crippled, was also sent back to the Azure Water Sword sect. When Shenbai was crippled by Chu Xiu, he was immediately treated by the Mirror Lake Manor's martial artists. Afterwards, the Mirror Lake Manor's martial artists all ran away. It wasn't like Shenbai was left alone. A few rogue martial artists brought Shenbai away and escorted him all the way back to the Azure Water Sword sect. Of course, these rogue martial artists didn't really have good intentions. They just wanted to use this matter to ask for some benefits from the Azure Water Sword sect. Right now, in the Azure Water Sword sect's main hall, the unconscious Shenbai was lying on a stretcher and was placed in the middle of the entire main hall. Lu Gongyuan looked at Shenbai, who had an extremely low qi presence. It was as if Shenbai had suddenly aged by more than 10 years. There were still Do Guanchen and a few other Azure Water Sword sect core disciples around, and the atmosphere was already oppressive to the extreme. The few rogue martial artists that escorted Shenbai were somewhat regretful at this moment. From the looks of it, what if the Azure Water Sword sect killed all of them to vent their anger? Just as these few people were about to die from fear, Lu Gongyuan sighed and waved his hand. Many thanks for sending my disciple back. You may leave. Someone will bring you to collect some elixirs as a thank you gift. The few rogue martial artists then let out a long breath and quickly said, many thanks, Senior Lu. This is what we should do. With that, they hurriedly retreated out of the room. After they left, Do Guanchen spoke with bloodshot eyes. Chu Xiu deserves to be killed. Master, little junior brother has been crippled. We must find that Chu Xiu to seek justice for this matter. Shenbai was their Azure Water Sword sect's future hope. Do Guanchen and the others were more or less envious and jealous of Shenbai, but they knew that their potential was already at the limit. In the future, only Shenbai would be able to lead the Azure Water Sword sect to rise. Without the skin, where would the hair attach? Only with Shenbai's rise, the Azure Water Sword sect could rise, and they would still be disciples of the 7 sects and 8 schools. Now that Shenbai was crippled, the Azure Water Sword sect's hope of rising was forcefully crushed by Chu Xiu. Once Lu Gongyuan died, their Azure Water Sword sect would be forcefully kicked out of the 7 sects and 8 schools. Lu Gongyuan closed his eyes and revealed a trace of grief on his aged face. His wrinkles seemed to have deepened. Chu Xiu deserves to be killed, but how do we kill him? He is our enemy's hero. To us, Chu Xiu is an enemy that must be killed. But to the Guanzhong torture room, Chu Xiu is a hero that helped them become famous. Even if we personally go to the Guanzhong torture room, do you think the Guanzhong torture room will hand him over? I am old and can no longer use the sinking river sword. Even if I can use this sword, I will not be able to defeat Guan Siyu's divine ability, 9 transformations. Of course, if I insist on killing Chu Xiu, it is not difficult. I might be old, but I can still pick up a sword. At most, I will be shameless and guard the Guanzhong torture room. Chu Xiu cannot possibly stay in the Guanzhong for his entire life. But do you know what the consequences are? The consequences are that I am bullying the weak. The Azure Water Sword sect's reputation will be ruined, and people will say that the Azure Water Sword sect is a sore loser. Even if I don't care about my reputation and forcefully kill Chu Xiu, it will incur the wrath of the Guanzhong torture room. Even if it is for their own reputation, the Guanzhong torture room will not remain silent. When I'm here, I can protect all of you by risking my life. But what if I'm dead? You will be facing the endless suppression of the Guanzhong torture room. When that happens, the Azure Water Sword sect will not just be kicked out of the 7 sects and 8 factions, it will be exterminated. Dou Guangchen and the others' eyes were red and were silent. They all knew that it wasn't that Lu Gongyuan didn't want to take revenge for Shenbai. He wanted to kill Chu Xiu more than anyone else. Shenbai was a disciple that he had raised since he was young. In order to nurture Shenbai, Lu Gongyuan put in all his effort and treated Shenbai as his own son. But now, Lu Gongyuan chose to endure, not because he was afraid, but because he was thinking for them. He was afraid that after he died, they would be retaliated by the Guanzhong torture room. Lu Gongyuan squatted down and took out the spirit medicine to feed Shenbai. He even personally used his qi to comb through the medicinal effects. He closed his eyes and sighed, Shenbai was crippled, and it was my fault. Back then, I kept Chu Xiu alive because I wanted to use him as a whetstone for Shenbai. I wanted Shenbai to kill this enemy and achieve success. Who would have thought that Chu Xiu would actually grow so terrifyingly? He didn't become Shenbai's whetstone, but Shenbai became his whetstone. I was still too anxious. Dou Guangchen hurriedly said, Master, don't say that. That Chu Xiu was too ruthless. Normally, when disciples from large sects fight, they would hold back. Who would have thought that Chu Xiu would disregard the rules and cripple his junior apprentice brother? Lu Gongyuan waved his hand and said, Wrong is wrong. There is no need to explain anymore. Chu Xiu and Shenbai have a blood feud. Whether it was to cripple or kill, he was decisive. If he held back, then he would be indecisive. Alright, you guys can leave first. After hearing Lu Gongyuan's words, Dou Guangchen and the others had no choice but to leave. Chapter 261. In the Grand Hall, with the help of Lu Gongyuan's qi, the medicinal effects constantly seeped into Shenbai's body, causing Shenbai, who had been unconscious for nearly a month, to slowly wake up. The moment Shenbai saw Lu Gongyuan, he knew where he was. His eyes couldn't help but reveal a trace of pain and unwillingness. After a while, he spoke bitterly, Master, I am sorry. I lost. Besides apologizing, Shenbai didn't know what else to say. He wasn't someone with a weak mental state like Lin Kaiyun, who would be completely disheartened and dispirited after suffering a setback. Even though his cultivation was crippled, Shenbai felt more guilt towards the Azure Water Sword sect and towards his master, Lu Gongyuan. Lu Gongyuan treated him like his own son and taught him everything. He even placed the entire Azure Water Sword sect's future on Shenbai's shoulders. In the end, after a single battle, Shenbai was defeated and crippled. He was defeated so miserably. It could be said that the entire Azure Water Sword sect's future was lost in his hands. How could he not feel guilty? Even his hatred towards Chu Xiu wasn't as heavy as his current guilt. Patting Shenbai's hand, Lu Gongyuan sighed, "There is no need to say sorry. This is all fate, karma. Even I didn't expect Chu Xiu to actually grow to this stage. If the heavens wanted to end my Azure Water Sword sect, without Chu Xiu, there would still be Zhang Xiu and Wang Xiu. The result would still be the same. But I am unwilling." Shenbai gritted his teeth. "After cultivating for more than 10 years, I am just one step away from bringing the Azure Water Sword sect back to prominence. But now, I am crippled. Master, your efforts are all in vain." Shenbai knew how much the Azure Water Sword sect paid to nurture him. Even if the Azure Water Sword sect found another young martial artist with the same talent as Shenbai, the Azure Water Sword sect wouldn't be able to nurture a second Shenbai. Because the Azure Water Sword sect had limited resources, Lu Gongyuan's energy was also limited. But right at this moment, Lu Gongyuan suddenly said, "You are truly unwilling?" Shenbai nodded heavily. No one would be unwilling to accept this kind of thing. Lu Gongyuan sighed, "There is always a way out. Even if our Azure Water Sword sect is facing the risk of decline, our ancestors still left us a chance of survival. This chance of survival might not be reliable, and I don't even know if it is real or fake. But apart from it, I have no other way to revitalize the Azure Water Sword sect. Are you willing to give it a try?" Shenbai struggled to stand up, gritted his teeth, and said, "No matter what method it is, this disciple is willing to try." Lu Gongyuan sighed again and said, "In that case, come with me." As he spoke, Lu Gongyuan brought Shenbai to the back mountain of the Azure Water Sword sect. Apart from Lu Gongyuan, who frequented this place, no one else was allowed to enter. "Shenbai, do you remember the legend of my Azure Water Sword sect?" Lu Gongyuan asked. Shenbai nodded and said, "Of course I remember. Legend has it that the Azure Water River was created when two ancient masters fought. One of the masters used a sword to slash it open. Of course, this was only a legend and no one knew if it was true or not. But the only thing that could be confirmed was that there were indeed sword Dao experts who fought here at Sanglan River. The Sanglan Sword sect's founder saw the sword scars left behind by the experts here, which was why he suddenly had an epiphany. His strength improved greatly, and he established the sect here. After thousands of years of development, it became one of the 7 sects and 8 schools, the Sanglan Sword sect." Lu Gongyuan suddenly said, "What if I say the legend is true? Is this huge Azure Water River really created by a human?" Shenbai's eyes revealed a trace of shock. "What? It's true?" With Shenbai's current cultivation, he couldn't imagine what it was like to create a river with a single slash. Even a martial Dao master like Lu Zongyuan couldn't do this. To be able to do this, they might not be humans anymore. It would be more appropriate to call them immortals or gods. Lu Gongyuan said in a deep voice, "It might sound unbelievable, but it is indeed true." And when the two masters fought, one of them was seriously injured at the location of the Azure Water Sword sect. In the past, my Azure Water Sword sect's ancestor was just an ordinary hunter. He accidentally rescued that expert, but that level of expert had already surpassed the limits of the human body. Ordinary methods were simply unable to save him. Moreover, that expert was already on the verge of death. But before that expert died, he drew a sword scar that contained the inheritance of the martial Dao intent from my Azure Water Sword sect's ancestor. It is because of that sword scar that the Azure Water Sword sect exists today. Otherwise, if it was like the legends, where my Azure Water Sword sect's ancestor only saw the traces left behind during a battle and established the Azure Water Sword sect, then my Azure Water Sword sect's ancestor was truly a heavenly prodigy. I'm afraid he would have long been accepted into a major sect instead of being a nameless individual. When Shenbai heard these secrets from Lu Gongyuan, his pale face couldn't help but reveal a trace of shock. With his cultivation level, hearing these things was like listening to legends. A sword scar left behind on the verge of death created one of the 7 sects and 8 schools, the Azure Water Sword sect. How strong was this person? Most importantly, such a master was seriously injured on the spot. How strong was the person who killed him? Lu Gongyuan said in a deep voice, "These things are the core secrets of the Azure Water Sword sect. It must be handed over to the next sect master, so even your eldest senior brother and the others don't know about it." In the past, that master left behind a powerful cultivation technique and asked the founder of the Azure Water Sword sect to find a fated person to help him pass it down. Of course, the members of the Azure Water Sword sect could also cultivate it, but that master bluntly said that the founder of the Azure Water Sword sect didn't have the qualifications to cultivate this cultivation technique. Humans are selfish, and the founder of the Azure Water Sword sect was the same. He tried to cultivate this cultivation technique, but found that he couldn't make up his mind to cultivate it. Later on, the Azure Water Sword sect didn't show this cultivation technique to anyone and only allowed the elites of the sect to try it. But without exception, all of them failed. In the past, that master asked the Azure Water Sword sect to find a fated person to pass down the cultivation technique, but in the end, the Azure Water Sword sect kept the cultivation technique for themselves and only allowed their own disciples to try it. Needless to say, this kind of behavior was somewhat immoral and very selfish. But none of the Azure Water Sword sect masters actually thought of showing this cultivation technique to outsiders. It was due to greed, but it was also human nature. What kind of cultivation technique was left behind by such a master? Was it a 9-revolution cultivation technique, a paragon cultivation technique, or a legendary peerless divine technique? If the Azure Water Sword sect handed over this kind of cultivation technique, then they would be the real idiots. But it wasn't known if this was due to their selfishness. After so many years, countless Azure Water Sword sect elites, even the sect master, had personally tried it, but they all failed. Lu Gongyuan pressed the trigger and a cave actually appeared at the back of the mountain. He walked into the cave with Shen Bai. In the deepest part of the cave, there was a skeleton sitting in the middle. The skeleton was very strange. Even though it was a skeleton, it didn't have the slightest feeling of terror. Instead, it was completely white and was actually emitting a sword aura like the edge of a sword. This skeleton was actually like a sword, causing Shen Bai, who was a swordsman, to involuntarily have the desire to worship it. At this moment, beside the skeleton, there were more than a dozen skeletons, but they were all in a kneeling position towards the skeleton in the middle. Lu Gongyuan spoke in a deep voice, "The skeleton in the center is the skeleton of that master. After millions of years, it still remains immortal and is still as resplendent as before. The surrounding skeletons are the elites of our Azure Water Sword sect who tried to cultivate this cultivation technique. Some of them were even the sect master." After passing down the position to the next sect master, they chose to come here for a life and death seclusion to cultivate this cultivation technique. You have also seen the result. If you don't succeed, you will die. These seniors are kneeling here and also have the intention to apologize to that master. The sect seniors who chose to come here to cultivate this cultivation technique all had amazing talent and strength. Some were even stronger than you. There were many who reached the martial Dao master realm, but all of them died here. If you choose to cultivate this cultivation technique, there is almost no chance of survival. If you don't cultivate, your martial arts might be crippled, but you are still young. My Azure Water Sword sect can also give you a lifetime of riches and honor." Shen Bai didn't even consider and said, "Master, there is no need to say anything more. I choose to cultivate this cultivation technique." There were plenty of martial artists who had their martial arts crippled, but for most martial artists, the feeling of having their martial arts crippled was simply worse than death. If they had never obtained such powerful strength, it was fine for them to be ordinary people for the rest of their lives. But they had already tasted the feeling of power, and the result was that they were suddenly knocked down from the clouds. This feeling was truly worse than death. If it was a martial artist with mediocre strength, then so be it. They might choose to live on. But Shenbai was different. He was an extremely prideful person. Back when he faced Chu Xiu on the stage, he knew at the last moment that he would most likely lose, but he didn't choose to escape. Instead, he used a secret technique to fight to the death with Chu Xiu. Now, he naturally wouldn't choose to live on in such a humiliating manner. Since he still had a chance, even though this chance was extremely slim, he had to grab it. If he didn't succeed, then he would die trying. Lu Gongyuan sighed, since you have such determination, then I won't say anything more. The cultivation technique is here. As he spoke, Lu Gongyuan waved his hand and swept off the dust on the wall. Rows of sharp sword chi words appeared, as if they were carved by a long sword. Among them, the most eye-catching were the opening 4 sentences. 10,000 chi is born, the sword pierces the crippled acupuncture point. Return to origin martial arts, Zhong Yuan's contributions are great. Lu Gongyuan spoke in a deep voice, to cultivate this cultivation technique, one must first cripple one's martial arts. This first step would cause 99% of people to shrink back. In the past, I also had the thought of cultivating this cultivation technique, but in the end, I didn't have the courage to take this step and gamble on a slim chance. Right now, this cultivation technique is your last chance, and also the Azure Water Sword sect's last chance. It all depends on whether or not you can grasp it. Remember, the name of this cultivation technique is 10,000 Sword Return Sect. Chapter 262. Azure Billow Sword Sect and Shenbai had bet their last bit of luck on this gamble. The atmosphere was solemn and stirring. Compared to Azure Billow Sword Sect, the Evil Extreme Sect, which also had elite disciples killed by Chu Xiu, was much more relaxed. The Evil Extreme Sect was one of the 7 sects and 8 schools, but because of its relationship with the Kunlun Devil cult, it was extremely low-key. Although the Evil Extreme Sect wasn't located in the deepest north like the Drifting Snow City, it was still considered close to the Drifting Snow City. With such a neighbor, the Evil Extreme Sect could be said to be even more low-key in recent years. At this time, in a side hall of the Evil Zenith Sect, a bare-chested, handsome young martial artist was sitting cross-legged on the ground, cultivating. There was a strange blood-red dragon tattoo on his chest, and as he circulated his true chi, the blood-red dragon's body actually swelled up and down in accordance with his breathing rhythm. It was a very strange sight. In his hand, there was also a blood-red long spear. The entire body of the spear was carved into the shape of a dragon's body. The dragon's tail was the spear's tip, and the dragon's head was the spear's handle. It looked slightly sinister. At this moment, a martial artist shrouded in a black robe pushed open the door and entered. The man immediately opened his eyes. The strangest thing was that his pupils were actually vertical at this moment, and they were also a strange blood-red color, like some kind of snake. But in an instant, they returned to normal. Knocking on the door is a good habit. If you can't learn it, I will use my blood dragon to teach you well. The black-robed martial artist laughed awkwardly. Yi Xianxia, don't be ungrateful. I am here to give you information. One good news, one bad news, which one do you want to hear first? Seeing Yi Xianxia's eyes turning red again, and his pupils starting to vertical, the martial artist quickly said, all right, I will not keep you in suspense. The good news is that during the Divine Weapon Conference, those guys from Phaseless Demon Sect jumped out to cause trouble again. They wanted to seize the Hidden Sword Villa's Devil Sword Eternal Yearning, but in the end, it ended in a lose-lose situation. Yi Xianxia said lightly, this is good news for the sect, but what kind of good news is it for me? They were both demonic sects, but the Evil Extreme Sect was a traitor of the former Kunlun Devil cult, while the Phaseless Demon Sect was a loyal follower of the former Kunlun Devil cult. Naturally, the two of them were mortal enemies. The black-robed man laughed and said, the sect has spent so much to nurture you. Isn't the good news of the sect also good news for you? Don't be so calculative. But there's also bad news. Tong Kaitai, the devil hunter you chose to block the bullet, is dead. He died in the hands of Chu Xiu, the young hero of the Guanzhong torture room. Yi Tianxia's expression did not change when he heard this. He just said lightly, "He died so soon. He's really useless. I thought he could at least hold on for a while. But this guy's brain is not very good. If the evil extreme sect did not save him, I'm afraid he would have been killed by the Taoist master abode of Mount Longhu long ago." When Tong Kaitai appeared at the God Weapon Conference, most people in the Jianghu thought that the evil extreme sect had really declined. After so many years of silence, they had not nurtured any outstanding talents. They actually wanted to recruit a guy like Tong Kaitai, who had a bad reputation and was even a wandering martial artist, to keep up appearances. But in reality, the evil extreme sect had been enduring all these years. For the evil extreme sect, they no longer cared about the reputation of the outside world. The only thing that mattered was their own development. These years, the demonic path had been on the decline. Their evil extreme sect was close to the Temple of Light and the fluttering snow city of the far north. They were all in the northern Yan land, so it was better for them to keep a low profile. For example, the phaseless demon sect had been stubbornly loyal to the long-gone Kunlun devil cult. What was the result? Didn't they still get chased around like stray dogs and everyone wanted to beat them up? Tong Kaitai was just a smokescreen thrown out by the evil extreme sect to make the outside world think that the evil extreme sect was very weak. But they could not let go of their pride, so they found someone like this to keep up appearances. The black-robed man shook his head and said, "I don't want to say this, but are you really not interested in the Longhu leaderboard? Others may not know, but I know that if you come out of seclusion, you can definitely compete with the Sword Chief Fang Qi Shao and the Little Celestial Master Zhang Qingzhen." The expression on Yi Tianxia's face did not change at all. He only said calmly, "I will come out of seclusion to compete with them sooner or later. But not now, but in the future. The Longhu leaderboard is just something wind-sweeping tower made up to fool those idiots. Do people really take this ranking seriously? Only those who can live to advance from the Longhu leaderboard will have the right to compete with me in the future. Otherwise, they will be like that idiot Tong Kaitai. So what if they rise to the top 10 of the Longhu leaderboard? Even if they deserve to die, they will still die. But after all, he was thrown out by my omniscient sect as a facade, and he was also personally chosen by me. Now that he is dead, my omniscient sect can't do nothing. Go and tell the sect master to find an opportunity to cause some trouble for the Guanzhong torture room or Chu Xiu. It will be enough to make our omniscient sect's presence known." Normally speaking, if a disciple dared to order the sect master to do something, it would simply be disgraceful. But in the omniscient sect, this kind of thing was very normal. Yi Tianxia's identity was special, and they were already used to it. Therefore, the black-robed man simply nodded and immediately retreated. At this moment, in the Guanzhong torture room, Chu Xiu didn't know what happened in the Azure Billow Sword sect or the Omniscient sect. After drinking with Chu Yuanqing for an entire night, he came to report to Guan Siyu about the Divine Weapon Convention the next day. In the main hall's guest hall, Chu Xiu was waiting. Guan Siyu still had to deal with some official matters before coming over. This wasn't Guan Siyu purposely giving Chu Xiu the cold shoulder, but it was his habit. As long as there wasn't a huge mess, his routine wouldn't change. Right at this moment, a fragrant wind drifted over from the hall. Mei Qinglian leisurely walked over and placed a cup of tea in front of Chu Xiu. She softly said, "Master will be here in a while. Official Chu, please wait for a moment." Chu Xiu hurriedly stood up and cupped his hands. "Sorry to trouble madam." Chu Xiu had never underestimated this woman. She was Guan Siyu's wife. Although she didn't have any authority in the Guanzhong torture room, as long as she whispered pillow talk into Guan Siyu's ear, it would affect a lot of things. It was obvious from the attitude of Wei Jiuduan and the other torture officers. They were very cautious with Mei Qinglian. At this moment, Mei Qinglian suddenly took a step closer to Chu Xiu. Her cold face suddenly bloomed with a hint of a smile. Her entire body was filled with a mature charm, but her expression had always been cold and indifferent. At this moment, when she smiled, it was even more bewitching. If it wasn't for the fact that Chu Xiu had high attainments in the soul-extinguishing technique and his strong mental strength, he would probably have made a fool of himself. Official Chu represented the Guanzhong torture room in the God Weapon Conference this time. You have brought glory to the Guanzhong torture room. What is a cup of tea? I am just a woman. I want to do my best for the torture hall, but I can't find the opportunity. Chu Xiu's expression didn't change as he said, there are only the strong and the weak in the pugilistic world. There is no distinction between men and women. I met a lady at the God Weapon Conference this time. Although she is a woman, she is stronger than most men. Oh. Who is she? Mei Qinglian's eyes twinkled. Her eyes were filled with charm and charm. It was very alluring. Wu County's Luo family, Luo Feiheng. Chu Xiu took half a step back. He picked up the tea on the table and took a sip. Mei Qinglian took the opportunity to sit on the chair beside Chu Xiu. She sighed and said, Luo Feiheng? I have heard of her. This little sister is very impressive. Unfortunately, she was born in the wrong place. Sometimes, women are like this. Their hearts are higher than the sky, but their lives are thinner than paper. If you want to fight for it, if you want to seize it, it is 100 or even 1,000 times more difficult than you men. Chu Xiu knocked on the table and said lightly, where there is a will, there is a way. Heaven will not disappoint those who work hard. What I am afraid of is not the difficulty, but the lack of the heart. At this time, Mei Qinglian suddenly smiled and said, well said. No wonder official Chu has such strength at such a young age. Oh right, I heard that official Chu obtained a divine weapon forged by Grandmaster Mo Yizi. Can I have a look at it? Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows. However, he still untied the heavenly demon dance from his waist and placed it in front of Mei Qinglian. He said, there was a mishap in the God Weapon Convention. This saber I obtained is not a divine weapon. It is only a 6th revolution precious weapon. Mei Qinglian stretched out her slender hand and gently stroked the saber. Her eyes revealed a trace of confusion. However, when he saw this, Chu Xiu's eyes shone with a strange light. The heavenly demon dance was a demonic murderous weapon. When it was forged, Chu Xiu and the others were first fused with the sharp qi from the heavenly demon order and the pure devil qi from the heavenly demon order. Finally, it even fused with Chu Xiu's blood qi. It could be said that this was a standard demonic murderous weapon. Not to mention an ordinary person, even a Xiantian realm martial artist would have their fingers cut by the sharp evil qi from the heavenly demon dance if they carelessly touched it. But now, Mei Qinglian was caressing the heavenly demon dance with ease. There was not the slightest abnormality on her hand. There was also no burst of true qi. What did this mean? It meant that the strength of her body was astonishing. Just her body alone was stronger than the inner force of a Xiantian realm martial artist. However, in Chu Xiu's impression, no one had ever said that Mei Qinglian knew martial arts. No one had ever said that she did not know martial arts. In any case, Chu Xiu could not see through her. In Chu Xiu's eyes, she was just an ordinary person. What's the name of this saber? Mei Qinglian suddenly asked. Heavenly Demon Dance. Mei Qinglian put down the saber and chuckled. Heavenly Demon Dance? That's a good name. It's a saber forged from the Heavenly Demon Order of the Kunlun Devil Cult. Now, it's named after the Heavenly Demon. It's quite appropriate. However, the Kunlun Devil Cult is a taboo in Jianghu. Official Chu is using such a strong demonic weapon. Isn't he afraid of being criticized by others? Mei Qinglian raised her beautiful eyes and stared at Chu Xiu without blinking. You're tuning into the Carefree Valley YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.